If you like the story, you can support the author on Patreon. Link is in the description.
Chapter 41, Goodbye, Itaki. Yami, you're back. After school, Izumi spotted a familiar figure standing at the school gate. Her eyes lit up, and she rushed over to him like a butterfly, even using chakra to speed up. Seeing the bright smile on the straight-haired black-haired girl's face, Yami opened his arms and hugged the approaching Izumi. As usual, he rested his hands on her soft hair and gently stroked it. His mood lifted as well. Yet, our squad's Jainin instructor got severely punished by his brother, so he won't be leading us on missions for a while. Hey? He's already a Jainin, and he's still getting scolded by his brother. He had it coming. Who told him to go out and have fun without me? So I ratted him out. Wow, that's a bad uncle. Izumi nodded, not fully understanding, but she quickly let it go. Holding Yami's hand, she walked home with him, chatting about the little things that had happened at school over the past few days. Without Uchiha Itaki and Yami around, Izumi's talent stood out and was quickly noticed by the teachers. If it had been any other Uchiha who stood out like this, they would have already been targeted by Dan's and Hiruzen. But since Yami had specifically instructed to protect her, Dan's couldn't make a move, and Hiruzen only kept a close eye on her without taking further action. So, there was no need to worry about Izumi's safety. After eating dinner at Izumi's house and helping her train her fire release for a bit, Yami said goodbye. However, he didn't leave the Uchiha clan compound. Instead, he walked toward the forest behind it. He had heard from Izumi that after losing to him, Itaka had become even more focused on training. Other than going on missions, he spent the rest of his time training in the forest behind the clan. Sometimes, Izumi would go there to train too, and the two would occasionally run into each other. But besides exchanging nods, there wasn't much interaction. One was the clan head's son. The other, a peripheral figure within the Uchiha. Their only real meeting during the Nine Tails night had been interrupted by Yami. Izumi and Itaka were only classmates who happened to be acquainted. Upon entering the woods, Yami realized a weakness of his own. Without strong sensory ninjutsu, finding someone was extremely troublesome. Originally, he had hoped to acquire the Byakugan bloodline from Hisashi. But the rewards from the 2 stages so far had all been body-related. It looked like he'd have to grind further to get the Byakugan he wanted. It seemed he would need to find a sensory-type ninjutsu that suited him. Yami darted through the forest while thinking about his future training plan. Suddenly, a ball of fire lit up deep in the forest. The sky was already dark, so it stood out clearly. Without hesitation, Yami rushed toward the light. He didn't bother hiding his presence. Uchiha Itaki, who was training, noticed the movement as he approached. He raised his kunao warily and looked in the direction of the sound. An old classmate pointing a kunao at me right after we meet? What, want to spar again, Itaki? Yami's voice rang out, and in the next moment, he was already standing in front of him. Yami. Itaki responded flatly, but he didn't lower his kunao. Hardly anyone comes here. I thought it was a beast, or maybe a spy from another village sneaking in, so I acted on instinct. Forget the sparring. If we meet in the Chunin exams, we can have another match then. Although he had made considerable progress under the guidance of Shisui and Fugako lately, Itaka knew there was still a gap between him and Yami. At the very least he would only be truly qualified to fight him once his Sharingan evolved again. I'm always available. Yami shrugged nonchalantly. If Itaka had awakened the Manjiki already, he might have been a threat. But if it was just the regular Sharingan, whether 1 tomo or 3, it made no difference to him. I came here specifically to see you today. To see me? Itaka looked puzzled. Yami smiled. I noticed Shisui-senpai wasn't home. It's been a while since I last asked him for advice, and I'm getting a bit itchy. So, pass the word to him I'll be home all day tomorrow. He can come by any time. Itaka gave a slight nod. I'll let him know. Anything else, Yami? Nope. Keep training. Try to last longer next time. With a wave of his hand, Yami activated body flicker technique and vanished in front of Itaka. Itaka stared silently in the direction Yami had left, then turned back to his fire release training. But this time, a small flame seemed to ignite in his eyes, and the temperature of his fire release grew even more intense. Last longer humph. Underestimating the Uchiha will come at a price. Back at home, Yami began rummaging through boxes and cabinets. He gathered all the ninjutsu scrolls in the villa and spread them across the floor. Then, he began flipping through them one by one. I already learned multiple shadow clone water barrier, got that too. Vacuum sphere, I'll keep that around for now. Why are these all elemental ninjutsu? As he flipped through the scrolls, Yami frowned. There wasn't a single sensory type ninjutsu at home, just various elemental jutsu and the swordsmanship scroll that Dan's had given him. Looks like I'll have to go borrow the book of sealing from the old man. Setting down the final scroll of earth release, Yami gave up. He remembered that Namikaze Minato had mastered a technique that allowed him to sense enemies by touching the ground with his fingers. It was likely recorded in the book of sealing. But when Yami opened his status panel and checked his current stats, he still wasn't sure if he had any sensory talent. That said, he felt it was unlikely that sensory ninjutsu required a specific talent. Otherwise, after grinding for over a year, he wouldn't still be missing even the most basic one. Forget it for now. Time to sleep. After putting all the scrolls back into the bookshelf, Yami took a bath and returned to his bedroom to rest. The next day, around 10 in the morning, Uchiha Shisui arrived at Yami's house with a sword strapped to his back. Shisui-senpai. Yami, long time no see. Shisui smiled warmly. Yami nodded. Yeah, it's been a while. I've reserved the training ground. I wanted to learn from you and see how much I've improved lately. Last night, when he returned home, Shisui had seen the note left by Itaki and wasn't surprised. The two of them left the Shimura compound and headed toward the training ground. Chapter 42, A Small Victory, Yami's Request. Although he had another reason for seeking out Shisui this time, Yami genuinely wanted to exercise his body. So he took the sparring seriously. Of course, his level of seriousness remained within the limits of what Shisui could perceive. In this world, no one knew that he had already awakened 5 basic chakra natures along with the special attributes of yin and yang. As far as the outside world was concerned, Yami only had fire and wind attributes, along with excellent swordsmanship. That alone was enough to support his reputation as a genius. Status panel. Name, Shimura Yami. Gender, male. Age, 7.5 years old. Date of birth, April 1, year 46, Konoha calendar. Chakra attributes, fire, wind, limit break, earth, water, thunder, yin, yang, ultimate. Total chakra, 9.3 cards, 1 card 5 standard Jainin chakra. Chakra control talent, ultimate. Mastered ninjutsu, basic 3 techniques, numerous C-rank elemental jutsu, and a few B-rank elemental jutsu. Nature transformation, wind release, limit break, fire release, mastery, earth release, proficient, water release, proficient. Special talents, father's expectations, mother's love, Senju bloodline, ordinary, developing, stealth mastery, swordsmanship genius, ninja world darkness, mother-in-law's expectation, space ninjutsu talent, 2/3, Uchiha bloodline, rich. Evaluation, your age and physical development limit your current potential. Be patient and gradually turn talent into strength. The second stage of the mother's love bond reward had made Yami's talent panel exceedingly luxurious, but his strength had not significantly improved during this period. As the system noted, even the greatest talent takes time to mature, and requires corresponding physical development to support it. The gap between an ordinary shinobi and a kage can't be bridged overnight. Training ground number 18. In the open field, Yami and Shisui were locked in fierce combat. Under the effect of body flicker technique, it looked as if the two of them were using multiple shadow clones. But in reality, they weren't. What appeared to be clones were merely afterimages left behind by body flicker. Each afterimage had no mass or substance, but every flicker was the real body. At this point, Shisui had fully unleashed the power of his 3-tomo Sharingan. With his dynamic vision, even if his swordsmanship couldn't match Yami's, his reaction speed and sight were extraordinary. Meanwhile, Yami kept his head slightly lowered, avoiding direct eye contact to prevent getting caught in genjutsu. Fire style, great fireball technique. Shisui suddenly switched tactics, spewing a massive fireball from his mouth. Yami turned his blade, coating the Kusanagi sword with wind chakra and slashing forward. The powerful sword energy split the fireball in two, but Shisui had already vanished behind its cover. In the next moment, Yami abruptly swung his sword backward, colliding with Shisui's short sword. all while keeping his head lowered. But the next second, he cursed silently, crap. The gleaming blade of the kusanagi had reflected Shisui's gaze, eyes filled with a subtle smile. In that instant, Yami felt as though countless monsters lunged at him, baring their fangs and claws. Just when Shisui thought the battle was over, Yami, who should have been caught in the genjutsu, suddenly moved and kicked him away. Shisui tumbled through the air several times before crashing to the ground more than 10 meters away. He stood up in a bit of a mess, staring at Yami in disbelief. You weren't caught in the illusion. Yami sheathed his sword and replied modestly, almost. I was right on the edge of getting trapped. You acted that well, hey. Shisui gave a bitter smile and slung his short sword back over his shoulder. The fight had indeed ended, but he was not the winner. That kick Yami landed had been held back. If Yami had attacked with full strength in that moment of vulnerability, or even swung his sword instead of kicking, he might have been seriously injured or worse. Your chakra's growing at an incredible rate, Shisui remarked as he took out 2 bamboo water tubes, tossing one to Yami and taking a sip from his own. The essence of genjutsu is disrupting chakra flow. Shisui had misjudged the total amount of Yami's chakra, so the illusion failed. But a loss was still a loss. Shisui didn't make excuses, only felt genuinely happy about Yami's progress. After all, he was half his disciple too. Yami took a sip of water and said calmly, everyone's good at something. I just happen to have more chakra. More. Shisui looked at him strangely. Yami's chakra was far more terrifying than his own, and that was even with the enhancement of his 3 Tomo Sharingan. If this was just a little, how could ordinary shinobi even survive? Still, Shisui didn't press the matter. Tilting his head slightly, he asked, you didn't call me out today just for sparring, did you? There is something else. Yami nodded calmly. But this isn't the right place to talk about it. Let's move somewhere more private. Hearing that, Shisui was even more curious. He leapt down from the stone and put away the bamboo tube. Follow me. There's a spot I often use for training. Not many people go there. 15 minutes later, the two arrived deep in the forest on Konoha's eastern side. A cliff loomed ahead, with a waterfall roaring down below. How's this? Shisui asked. It'll do. Yami picked up a stone and tossed it back and forth in his hand. Shisui-senpai, what's your opinion en route? Shisui was taken aback. He hadn't expected Yami to ask something like that. After thinking it over for a moment, he replied honestly, everyone works hard to protect Konoha, each following their own sense of justice. The methods may differ. Root may dwell in darkness and employ extreme methods, but I know there are missions only Root can complete. They do it for Konoha's safety. Exactly. Everyone acts for Konoha. You see things clearly, unlike some who hold deep prejudice against Root. Yami looked up slowly, still playing with the stone in his hand. There's a difficult mission right now. After searching the whole village, I found you to be the most suitable person for the job, Shisui-senpai. For the sake of the village, would you be willing to carry it out and promise not to inform the third Hokage? Chapter 43, Chapter 43, You don't want Ataka to die young, do you? At the top of the cliff, Yami and Shisui stood side by side. From here, the entire view of Konoha stretched out before them. The faces of the 4 Hokage carved into the mountain, and the domed Hokage building in the center of the village stood out prominently. After Yami stated his purpose, Shisui fell silent. Yami wasn't in a hurry. He simply admired the scenery. People moved about the crisscrossing roads below, so small and insignificant, like ants. As the wind blew fiercely and the sound of the waterfall crashing against the rocks echoed beneath their feet, Shisui slowly drifted into deep thought. Concealing this is a kind of betrayal. Was this a demand to take sides? No. That wasn't possible. Shisui immediately rejected the notion that had just crossed his mind. Despite being called a genius, he was, in the end, still a mere chunin. He had little real influence. At most, people praised his potential. In the eyes of Dens and the Hokage, he was just a minor figure. This had to be a highly confidential Root mission, so secretive that even the Hokage wasn't informed. Things like this had happened before. With Root's authority, the Hokage didn't interfere in many of its actions. Yami-kun. Shisui gathered his thoughts, turned slightly, and looked down at Yami beside him. Did Lord Dens ask you to deliver this message? No, this is my personal request. Yami answered without hesitation, meeting Shisui's gaze openly. I see. Shisui didn't believe it, but it only made him more certain of his assumption. Smart people think independently. They don't blindly trust others, they form their own judgments. But that's also their weakness. They place too much trust in their own reasoning, and as a result, they lack trust in others. To Shisui, Yami's words and behavior felt natural, as if he had been trained to say them. Which, in turn, made them feel unnatural. So, this must all be a message from Dan's. Seeing Shisui's expression, a faint smile flickered in Yami's eyes. Everything was progressing as expected. His age, the identity of a child, the gravity that came with being a root member, and the recognition he had already earned, these made Shisui think exactly as he wanted him to. Can I ask what the mission is, specifically? No. Yami shook his head. Only if you accept it and promise not to inform the third Hokage will I tell you. But if you do tell him. A leaf blew over from the distance. Yami caught it and slowly tore it in half. Shisui, you've taught me before, so I won't do anything to you, but Ataki is different. You don't want Ataki to die young, do you? Shisui's eyes instantly sharpened. Host and Uchiha Shisui have reached the second stage of the fear bond. Reward, talent illusion expertise. Ataki held an irreplaceable place in Shisui's heart. He treated him like a younger brother and Ataki looked up to him the same way. Yami no, Dan's was using Ataki to threaten him. Shisui's once gentle aura suddenly turned cold. The howling wind faded, and the world fell silent. But Yami remained calm, still slowly tearing the leaf. In terms of actual combat strength, he was no weaker than Shisui. Yami was certain that Shisui hadn't awakened his Mangeki yet. There were still about 4 years left before his death. Only after obtaining Kota Amatsukami would Shisui develop the belief and confidence to resolve the village Uchiha conflict. Right now, he wasn't capable of that. If he made a move now, he'd only die sooner. Seeing that Yami remained unfazed, Shisui knew there was nothing he could do. Yami-kun, don't you think this is too despicable? Shisui said helplessly, you're using Ataki to threaten me. He's a villager too, your comrade. Yami remained unmoved. Everything is for the greater good. Even villagers can be sacrificed. Everything is for the greater good. Shisui was stunned, carefully turning Yami's words over in his mind. The more he thought about it, the more profound it sounded. Could Dan's really have come up with something so philosophical? Shisui couldn't help but feel a sense of admiration. The image of Dan's in his heart instantly grew taller and his attitude softened as well. This mission must be extremely important and confidential. Otherwise, it wouldn't be hidden from the Hokage. As long as the Hokage doesn't ask, there's no problem with not reporting it, right? Convincing himself, Shisui nodded and said seriously, as long as it doesn't harm the village's interests, I'll accept the mission and keep it secret. A smile appeared on Yami's young face. A wise decision, Shisui-senpai. This mission won't harm the village. On the contrary, it will strengthen it. Shisui finally breathed a sigh of relief. Tell me the details, then. Shisui-senpai, do you know about Scorch release user Pakura? Yami asked. Shisui nodded. Of course. She's a hero of Tsunagakura who possesses the Scorch release Kekii Genkai. I've never fought her, but her reputation is well known. At this, he looked at Yami a bit nervously. Don't tell me you want me to assassinate her. Facing a seasoned ninja like her, even with his body flicker technique, Shisui felt uncertain. Of course not. Yami shook his head. On the contrary, someone else wants to kill her. I want you to save her. What? Shisui stared at him in disbelief. His Sharingan almost activated from the shock. Not long ago, Root received intel that Tsunagakura plans to abandon Pakura in order to reconcile with Kirigakura. They intend to use her life to appease Kirigakura's anger. Next month, no, actually, it's the 15th of this month. She'll be heading to the Land of Water on a mission. Kirigakura has already received the intel and will ambush her in a canyon, killing her with arrows. After explaining everything, Yami said seriously, being betrayed by her own village, Pakura will definitely be filled with resentment. Even if we can't persuade her to submit, Root can still make use of her. Shisui-senpai, your body flicker technique and genjutsu are the strongest in the village. Most importantly, you're loyal to Konoha. That makes you the most suitable person for this mission. Chapter 44, Chapter 44, This is how you threaten someone. Collusion, the third Hokage's tolerance of Dan's. Shisui had no choice but to accept the mission, but he was no longer as resistant as he had been at the beginning. What Shimura said made sense. The value of a cage-level shinobi was immeasurable. Especially since she possessed Scorch style, whether alive or dead, Pakura was of great significance to Konoha. The only difficulty lay in rescuing her from the ambush set by the Mist Shinobi and the Sand Shinobi, without being discovered by either nation. Shisui asked for more details, and Yami didn't hide anything, telling him everything he'd gathered from Matsumoto and his own analysis. After listening, Shisui felt more confident and said decisively, "I'll go to the police department to request leave now. I'll head out tomorrow." Although there were still more than 10 days left, Shisui needed time for thorough preparation. He couldn't afford to waste a single moment. "Good luck on your mission, Shisui-senpai." As he watched Shisui's figure weaving through the woods, Yami waved, his voice precisely carried to Shisui's ears. "I'll be waiting for you with Itaki." Shisui landed on a large tree, only to lose his balance and crash through its thick trunk. That kid's got a mean streak. After leaving the cliffside, Yami thought it over and decided to inform the old man. After all, once Pakura was brought back, she would be placed under Root's control. It wasn't something he could keep from him. On Konoha's territory, the old man had more spies than Hiruzen. When Yami arrived at Root's base, Dan's was, as usual, randomly choosing some poor souls in his office to manipulate. Yami got straight to the point, explaining his plan and arrangements. Dan's frowned but didn't interrupt until Yami finished speaking. After a moment of contemplation, he stood up, pacing slowly as he spoke. "Yami, you're still too idealistic. As shinobi, we are tools. Even if the higher UPS use us in exchange for benefits, someone like Pakura may be dissatisfied, but she must learn to understand." Yami didn't refute, only nodded. Not because he agreed, but because in this twisted world, that's how most people thought. Take Shisui, for example. After Dan's gouged out his eyes, his first reaction wasn't revenge, he simply thought Dan's didn't trust him enough, and he tried to understand him. Or Itaki after Dan's killed his dear brother, he still acted as a spy for both Hiruzen and Dan's within the Uchiha clan, feeding them information, and ultimately wiped out his own clan for the sake of the village. All this just proved that, after generations of brainwashing, many people's thoughts and behavior were no longer understandable to Yami. But Pakura was different. In her impure state, she clearly expressed hatred toward Tsunagakuer, though in the original plot, she was eventually persuaded to return to the Pure Land. As long as she could be brought back and subjected to over a decade of brainwashing, there'd be nothing to worry about by then. "Old man, don't be so absolute," Yami said with a smile. "She's a cage-level shinobi, she's worth a try. If it doesn't work, we can just kill her. We won't lose anything." "That's true." Dan smiled. "So I'm not objecting. Let Uchiha Shisui give it a try. Whether it succeeds or not doesn't concern us." "But..." Dan's eyes gleamed coldly. "Your methods of threatening people are too soft. What's an Uchiha Itaki? Next time, if you want him to do something, use the entire Uchiha clan to pressure him. For example, Shisui. You don't want your clan assigned to high mortality missions in the future, do you? Understand?" Yami. He had thought he was shameless enough, but it turned out he was still a novice in front of a master. What else could he say? Elsewhere, the interrogation division had finished gathering all the intel from Matsumoto Jiku. Holding the report in hand, Yamanaka Inoichi frowned deeply, as if grappling with a serious dilemma. As the sun began to set and the warm red glow filled the room, he finally gritted his teeth, took the report, and headed for the Hokage building to meet with Hiruzen. "Third Hokage, the spy captured by Hisashi's team has been interrogated. Any important intel?" Hiruzen asked, still puffing on his pipe. "This is the compiled report. Please take a look." Inoichi respectfully placed the information on the desk and stepped back. Hiruzen quickly skimmed through it, marking several key points in red. Seeing that Inoichi wasn't leaving, he asked in confusion. "Inoichi, is there something else?" "Hokage-sama." Inoichi lowered his voice. "I found, someone tampered with part of the spy's memories. The method is very familiar, it resembles the Yamanaka clan's secret techniques." Hiruzen paused and slowly set down his pipe. "Can it be restored?" I'm sorry, but I couldn't manage it, Inoichi replied helplessly. I see. Hiruzen didn't blame him, instead gently encouraged him. You've worked hard recently. Go home early today and spend time with your family. Protecting the village is important, but so is the bond with family. Inoichi was deeply moved. He bowed again before leaving the office. Once he left, the smile vanished from Hiruzen's face. Dance. How could he not understand Inoichi's implication? The only ones capable of this, and with the nerve to do so, were people from Dan's route. Still, Hiruzen wasn't worried about Dan's intentions. The two had worked together and clashed for years, their political views dividing and merging again and again. Hiruzen was confident that Dan's would never betray the village. Even if at times Dan's acted more like a pig teammate than a comrade and often caused more damage than a traitor might, at the end of the day, his intentions were rooted in loyalty. So after noting the information, Hiruzen didn't give it much more attention and moved on to other matters. The next document to catch his eye was news regarding the Uchiha clan. Uchiha Shisui was accidentally injured while training ninjutsu and requires half a month of rest. Leave has been reported to the police department. Chapter 45, Chapter 45, Yugeo's request, bonus. Shimura clan compound, Yami's residence. Yami sat cross-legged on the tatami, unrolling a scroll nearly as tall as he was. It was a replica of the scroll of seals that countless shinobi dreamed of seeing with their own eyes. Dan's had tossed it to him after hearing Yami wanted to learn sensory ninjutsu. It really paid to have connections. For ordinary shinobi to even qualify to learn a forbidden jutsu from the scroll, not only did their background have to be spotless, they also had to make major contributions to Konoha. As a reward, Hiruzen would let them select one jutsu to learn. But for Yami, he could study as much as he wanted without restriction. That said, Dan's had warned him, certain techniques marked as extremely dangerous required permission to learn, while others did not. Well, the scroll of seals also contained regular ninjutsu. It was likely that Senju Tobirama had created a jutsu, and Senju Hashirama, without even looking at it, ordered it sealed. After Hashirama died, Tobirama seemed to develop a habit of sealing everything he made. Water style, severing wave, modified, water dragon bullet, three-hand seal version, water dragon bullet, hard vortex water blade, water riding strike. Looking at the long list of water release techniques, Yami was dazzled. But he didn't forget his main purpose. Ignoring the techniques that would drive any water release user crazy, he focused on locating sensory type jutsu. Eventually, he found it at the very end of the scroll. Spirit Wave Illusion Touch Super Sensory Tracking Ultimate Detection Shadow Style, crossed out, Mind's Eye of the Kagura, Universal Version. Yami's mouth twitched. That naming style, it had to be Namikaze Minato. The simplified name afterward was probably Kushina's doing. By connecting the fingers to the ground and scattering a large number of chakra threads, it allowed the user to sense life energy within a certain range. Compared to the original Mind's Eye of the Kagura, the range and precision were significantly weakened, but it was still a powerful sensory ninjutsu. Most importantly, it didn't require the Uzumaki bloodline. As long as chakra control was accurate enough, it could be mastered, making it very suitable for Yami. After copying down the training method for Spirit Wave Illusion Toyuahem, Mind's Eye of the Kagura, Universal Version, Yami started selecting other techniques. To his surprise, Uchiha Madara's signature fire style, Majestic Destroyer Flame, was recorded in the scroll, as well as other fire style, which had already been lost within the Uchiha clan. Copy it all. Just copy everything. That way, he could learn whatever he wanted later without having to keep borrowing the scroll of seals from the old man. After transcribing about 20 jutsu and their training methods, Yami stopped, rubbing his sore wrist. He already had several jutsu from all 5 chakra natures, plus Bringer of Darkness technique, Flying Thunder God technique, and mutually multiplying explosive tags. As for Wood Release, Dead Demon Consuming Seal, and Impure World Reincarnation, he either wasn't ready to learn them yet or couldn't use them even if he did, so he didn't pay them much mind. He wasn't Orochimaru, he didn't have the urge to learn every jutsu in the world. But with all 5 chakra attributes and high talent, why not? Learning more jutsu wasn't just for combat, it was also important for experiencing chakra nature transformation during the learning process. It was a shame that Kakashi's signature technique Reikari and Minato's Raise Nan weren't recorded in the scroll. Raise Nan was easy enough, it likely had the most detailed training instructions among any Hokage developed jutsu, so he could learn it on his own. Reikari, though he'd have to find a way to get it. It had many derivatives, and its effectiveness was solid. Well, he couldn't just feed enemies skewers of meatballs forever, could he? As for Flying Thunder God technique, although he was still one talent fragment short, Raid Namiyashi and Shiranui Genma were on the front lines. He'd definitely be able to get it once they returned. If all else failed, he could forge a bond of life and death. While choosing jutsu, Yami noticed something: Konoha had very few advanced wind release techniques. Only the A-rank jutsu Wind Scythe, which had been taken from Tsunagakure. A rough idea began to form in his mind. It seemed he would have to rely on himself to revive the glory of wind release. The next day, Hisashi was still recovering from his injuries. Just as Yami was preparing to go find a place to train his jutsu, someone came to find him again. Yujao. Seeing the purple-haired girl in front of him fiddling nervously with her fingers, Yami asked curiously, "Why are you here? Do you have a mission?" No mission." Yujao shook her head and bit her lip lightly. Finally, she made up her mind, bowed deeply, and said sincerely, "Yami-kun, please teach me swordsmanship." Yami was taken aback. He hadn't expected Yujao to come for that. In truth, what he didn't know was that Yujao had been wrestling with this for several days. The idea had actually taken root when she lost to him. During their journey, after receiving some of his guidance, she realized just how far apart they were in swordsmanship. It wasn't just about strength, it was about vision and foundation. The reason she hadn't come earlier wasn't because of pride. For the sake of improving her swordsmanship, pride didn't matter. But swordsmanship transmission was a sensitive subject anywhere. Back then, her father had worked for years to earn the chance to study Dance of the Crescent Moon under Heiat's father before being accepted as a disciple. Even though Yami was younger than her, if he agreed, she wouldn't hesitate to become his student. Yujao knew this was impulsive, but she had her reasons. "Sit down first. We can't talk properly like this." Yami snapped out of it. After collecting his thoughts, he pulled Yujao inside and brought her into the tea room. After a server delivered 2 cups of cold tea, he spoke slowly. "Teaching swordsmanship is no big deal to me, but the old man always says, you shouldn't suffer any loss. You have to earn something for your effort. We can talk about the reward later. Can you tell me why you are so desperate to improve your swordsmanship?" Chapter 46, as expected of Dan's grandson. Yujao's story was simple. When the team first assembled, Hyuga Hisashi had almost let it slip. Yujao's father and Gekei's father had both died on the battlefield in the land of Earth. When their bodies were found, they were incomplete, brutally dismembered. After investigation, it was determined that the one who killed them was a Jainin named Bunga, a highly valued shinobi in Uegakure under the 3rd Tsuchikage Noki. Yujao had trained tirelessly in swordsmanship for one goal, to personally avenge her father by killing his murderer. Manga. Yami rested his chin on his small hand, thinking hard. He vaguely remembered this person. He was indeed one of the stronger shinobi from the land of Earth, with a look somewhat similar to Kurotsuke's father, Kitsuki. During the 4th Shinobi World War, he had become the sealing squad leader, which meant in the end, Yujao's revenge had failed. When does revenge ever truly end? Yami sighed like a tiny adult completely at odds with his young age. Yujao's expression changed. She thought Yami was rejecting her request. But before she could show disappointment, she heard the little guy continue sighing. "That's why, when you kill someone, you have to pull them out by the roots, big or small, kill them all. Otherwise, when their kids grow up, they'll come looking for you. The cycle never ends. Such a pain." Yujao. She had forgotten Yami was Dan's grandson, there was no way he would say something soft-hearted. "I can teach you swordsmanship." Yami took a slow sip from his teacup. "I have not only Konoha's sword techniques, but also rare ones from other villages the old man collected for me. But what are you offering in return?" "Money?" Yujao asked tentatively. "I still have savings, and I can give you my mission earnings in the future." "What's your money worth?" "One embezzlement from the old man is worth more than that." Yami shook his head. "And I don't need jutsu either. I'm already qualified to learn most jutsu in Konoha. The Uzuki family was originally a samurai clan, so you don't even have a ninjutsu foundation." With each word, Yujao lowered her head more and more until she finally buried it into her chest. Only today did she realize that the person who had always been praised by her superiors and teachers as outstanding was actually so lacking. Of course Yami, sensing she had reached her limit, finally relented. You still have great potential. Fine, consider it my investment. So, for every month I train you, you'll help me with one thing. Don't worry, it won't be anything like betraying the village. Can you accept that condition? No problem. Yujao agreed without hesitation and bowed deeply. Thank you, Yami-kun. Ding. The bond between host and Uzuki Yujao has reached the third stage. Reward, Swordsmanship Hazy Moon Night. The information for Hazy Moon Night appeared in Yami's mind. It was an advanced sword technique fused with Dance of the Crescent Moon. While its power wasn't particularly outstanding, its attack style was highly unconventional. Alright. Yami set down his teacup and stood up. I was heading out to train anyway. Come with me. Yujao nodded and followed obediently. Training ground No. 47. It was still the same place Hisashi's team had gathered the first time. Although Yami already had a good grasp of Yujao's abilities, he decided to spar again, just to be safe. This time, Yami only defended and didn't attack, allowing Yujao to go all out. After about 15 minutes of combat, Yami called for a stop. By now, Yujao was panting heavily and dripping with sweat. Do you know what your problem is? Yami sat on a large stone, casually tossing the Kusanagi sword to the side. Stamina. Yujao asked between breaths. Surface level, Yami scoffed. That's the basics. After 5 minutes, your sword strength and speed drop. After 10 minutes, you can't even execute techniques properly. On top of that, your base strength is about the same as a child's. What's the point in learning flashier sword techniques? Snap. With a small slap of his hand on the stone, the Kusanagi sword leapt up. Yami caught it midair and brought it down forcefully. The entire rock split in two, revealing a smooth, clean cut. No matter what, speed and strength are the foundation of everything. Only when the base power is even can technique and tactics come into play. Don't focus on sword training for now. Improve your physical fitness and total chakra capacity first. Seeing his serious expression despite his young age, Yujao nodded firmly. I understand, Yami-kun. Good. You go refine chakra. I'll begin my own training. Yujao sat cross-legged under a large tree, focusing on chakra refinement, while Yami began practicing Mind's Eye of the Kagura, universal version. He placed his fingers on the ground and smoothly released chakra in a steady, orderly fashion, dividing it into countless thin threads that spread into the earth, forming a web-like structure. Chakra acted as the eye of will, enabling the user to sense the presence of nearby life forms. The first step was easy. Releasing chakra felt like walking on water. The difficult part was the second step, spreading the chakra threads evenly and maintaining equal strength in each one. If not, perception would be inaccurate. Even with his ultimate level chakra control talent, it still required repeated practice to master. The sun eventually began to set. Yujao had spent the entire day refining chakra, and Yami had spent the entire day poking the ground. By now, both of them were starving. Yujao took the initiative to invite Yami out for barbecue. She had found out last time that he loved it, especially beef. Meanwhile, Kurane stood outside Yujao's house, completely bewildered. Wait, where did her two teammates go? She had searched all day and still couldn't find them. Did they go on a mission without telling her? Chapter 47, Chapter 47, looking up from behind the canopy, the hero Jiraiya appears. Yakiniku-kyu. It was dinner time, and the restaurant was packed with guests. Most were Jonin and Chunin, very few Genin could afford to eat here. Yujao and Yami sat in a corner, their table piled high with premium beef, totaling tens of thousands of Ry. Yami only focused on eating, while Yujao handled the grilling. She even refilled his milk from time to time and wiped the corners of his mouth. In truth, Yujao only appeared cold and distant to outsiders. Once familiar, she was a gentle and traditional woman like a Yamato Nadeshiko. As for Kurane, she looked more mature and elegant on the outside, but mentally, she was still a little girl. She and Yami constantly bickered. The two of them had argued nearly every day recently. Hisashi was at his wits' end listening to it all. He felt like he was running a kindergarten. Ah, that hit the spot. After finishing the 20th plate of barbecue, Yami took a big gulp of milk, sighed with satisfaction, and ended the battle. The meal had been incredibly relaxing. He hadn't had to think about anything else. Every slice of meat had been grilled by Yujo to perfection, not too rare, not overcooked. He could just pop it into his mouth. Yujo, your cooking's really good. Yujo smiled softly. My father used to go on missions often. I learned to cook, clean, and take care of myself from a young age. If you ever have the chance, you should try my home cooking too. I make a lot of simple dishes. It's a deal then. Tomorrow, no, the day after tomorrow, I'll come over for dinner. Thinking of how the ninja school would be on break the next 2 days, Yami remembered he had to spend time with Izumi, so he postponed the free meal. Izumi hadn't been around that afternoon, and as a result, his mind's eye of the Kagura training had slowed down. I'm fine with that. Yujo nodded and didn't ask what kind of food he wanted. He had already mentioned that he wasn't picky about meals, and she had remembered it. Come back home with me later, Yami said. I've got a recipe for a medicinal bath. Using it long-term will increase your cell activity and strengthen your body. Yujo's expression changed slightly. Yami, I can't accept that. Elder Dans wouldn't approve. This kind of formula was a treasured family inheritance. Even if it couldn't create a cage-level powerhouse, it could significantly raise the clan's baseline strength. Don't worry. Yami waved it off casually. The old man already uses it en route shinobi. It's not something passed down by the Shimura clan. I don't even know where he got it from. Most of the good stuff in Dan's hands was stolen from everywhere. Some from extinct ninja clans, others from foreign nations. You could say he was well stocked. Thank you, Yami. I'll do my best to complete any task you assign me, Yujo said gratefully. We'll talk about that later. Your top priority right now is getting stronger. Yami patted his belly and hopped down from the sofa. The two of them left the barbecue restaurant and walked toward the Shimura compound. Neither spoke along the way. Yujo was silently thinking about how to repay Yami, while Yami was considering what gift to prepare for little Izumi tomorrow. He so big so white gulp. At that moment, an extremely perverted voice floated into their ears. Though quiet, Yami instantly pinpointed the source with his sharp intuition. On the roof of a nearby bathhouse, a white-haired man was lying flat on the tiles. His long white hair was like a hedgehog, twitching slightly, and he let out lecherous giggles from time to time. It was already dark, and that part of the street didn't have any lights. Without sharp eyes, you wouldn't have noticed anything. Yami snorted and quickly formed hand seals. Wind release, gale cutter. Several thin wind blades shot from Yami's mouth and streaked toward the white-haired man. The man had sensed the technique early on, but didn't bother to form any hand seals. The white hair on his back instantly stiffened and expanded, wrapping around his body for defense. What he didn't expect was, the wind blades weren't aimed at him at all, but at the tiles beside him. Swish! The tiles shattered instantly, large pieces crashing down into the bathhouse below. A chorus of panicked screams erupted. The white-haired man jumped up in a frenzy, darted down in a few steps, and landed in front of Yami and Yujo. He yelled angrily, "Brat! Do you know you just ruined a historic moment? Countless readers will send you razor blades." "I just stopped a pervert," Yami said flatly. "If your wife was bathing in there and someone peeped at her, how would you feel?" "Oh wait." Yami suddenly slapped his forehead, "How could a sleazy old man like you possibly have a wife?" Yujo saw his face and the forehead protector engraved with the word oil, and her expression changed immediately. She stepped back in shock, instinctively shielding Yami behind her. She still looked scared. And who could blame her? If it were an enemy, she'd be ready to die to protect Yami, but this. Any woman would be terrified. Since you're Jiraiya-sama, Yujo stammered nervously. Yami frowned. "Why do you call everyone master? Does he deserve it?" "What?" Jiraiya leaned back dramatically, then leaned forward and glared at Yami with wide eyes. "You don't even know who I am. How could I not? You're just an old pervert, right? You brat! Listen up!" Bang! A giant toad appeared in a puff of smoke. Standing on its back, Jiraiya struck an exaggerated, flamboyant pose. "North and south and east and west. I'm the white-maned toad charmer and one of the legendary Sunin whom even celestial beings can't defeat. I am no other than Master Jiraiya. Well? You get it now." Jiraiya folded his arms proudly, waiting for Yami to show his awe and admiration. Yami glanced around slowly, as if thinking. Just as Jiraiya was getting impatient, Yami finally asked, "Are you the Jiraiya who wrote the tale of the utterly gutsy ninja? You know that book?" Jiraiya's chest puffed out even more. He tried to act modest but couldn't hide the smugness in his tone. "That humble little work of mine, I didn't think a kid your age would understand such a profound story. I'm very optimistic about you. You've got real fan potential." "Who's your fan?" Yami said, annoyed. "I only read it when I have insomnia. I fall asleep in under a minute. I don't even remember what it's about." Pfft. Jiraiya spewed blood and collapsed on the toad, unable to get up. Chapter 48, Affinity with Sage Arts. For Jiraiya, writing a book is even more sacred than being a ninja. After being attacked by Yami, he now felt like dying. "Let's go, don't worry about this old pervert." Yet, ignoring Jiraiya's antics, Yami let Yujao hold his hand and prepared to leave. "Wait a minute." Jiraiya, who was lying on the ground pretending to be dead, suddenly grabbed Yami's ankle and said incredulously, "You little brat, are you really so heartless? I'm a legendary Sunin, aren't you afraid I'll teach you a lesson?" "So what?" Yami replied indifferently. "Wasn't there a Sunin in the village before? Didn't my grandfather drive him out? If you peek at the women's bathhouse again, I'll report you to the police department and let those red-eyed guys come catch you." Jiraiya fell silent. Whether it was the arrogance of driving out Orochimaru or the childish threat of calling the police department, he didn't even know how to respond. "Kid, Orochimaru is my friend. You said in front of me that Dan's drove him away. Aren't you afraid I'll get angry?" Jiraiya slowly stood up, shedding his usual lazy and carefree attitude. A powerful pressure belonging to the legendary Sunin radiated from his body. Yujao, who was standing beside Yami, couldn't withstand it. With a muffled groan, she staggered back a few steps before finally regaining control of her body. "Did my grandfather do something wrong?" Yami asked calmly, completely unaffected, as he looked straight at Jiraiya. "Your friend hurt people in the village, so he was driven out. Instead of blaming him, you come after my grandfather? Is that how adults act?" Jiraiya was stunned. The anger that had just surged within him was dispersed by this line of questioning. "That's right. Even if Dan's betrayed Orochimaru for his own goals, at least in this matter, he hadn't done anything wrong. The one at fault was Orochimaru." "Ha ha ha." Jiraiya suddenly burst out laughing and returned to his usual cheeky demeanor. "Your grandfather is Dan's? Then you must be Shimura Yami, right? The old man mentioned you to me. The genius who crushed the Uchiha clan, and even dares to call the third Hokage old monkey to his face. Not bad, I like you." "Yes, that's me." Yami nodded slightly, but deep down he was starting to feel uneasy. He had a hunch that Jiraiya had come here specifically because of him. Jiraiya released the summoning technique, sending the toad back to Mount Maiboku. Then, he placed a large hand on Yami's head and gave it a hard rub. Yami tried to dodge, but he wasn't fast enough and could only take the loss silently. "Kid, you're right. Dan's didn't do anything wrong. Orochimaru and I were the ones at fault." Jiraiya's gaze turned serious. "I'll definitely catch him and make him realize his mistakes." "Then are you still going to peek at the women's bathhouse?" "Of course not." Jiraiya waved his hand, but then his expression instantly shifted to a shameless grin. "Hee, everyone in the village is like family. What's wrong with sneaking a little peek?" As he spoke, he stomped the ground hard. The sound of his wooden clogs clashing with the floor echoed, and a puff of smoke erupted beneath his feet. When the smoke cleared, Jiraiya was gone. At the same time, Yami heard a prompt from the system in his mind. Host and Jiraiya have formed an appreciation bond. Reward, Special Talent Sage Arts Affinity, Primary. Good stuff. Sage Arts is a super tier power. In a way, it's the energy of the 6 paths level. But Jiraiya's talent in Sage mode wasn't that great. Even after decades of training, he still needed the assistance of the 2 great Sage Toads to fully tap into its power. Unlike Hashirama or the future Naruto, who could activate Sage mode with a simple hand clap. Yami's mood immediately improved. Phew, he's finally gone. Yujao let out a breath of relief and looked at Yami with lingering fear. "You were really brave just now. You actually dared to talk back to Lord Jiraiya like that. So what? The two resumed walking toward the Shimura residence. My grandfather is Danzō. Who in Konoha dares to bully me? Lord Jiraiya isn't afraid of Elder Danzō. But he's afraid of the third Hokage. And the third Hokage doesn't allow him to bully me. Otherwise, my grandfather would slam his door in his face. Hokage building. After a long day of exhausting duties, Hiruzen dragged his tired body out of the office and slowly made his way home. Hearing the ghost-like howling from inside, he immediately knew what was going on. He pushed open the door with a frown and sure enough, there was Jiraiya sitting in the living room, drinking crap. That was his treasured liquor. You bastard! Hiruzen moved with cage-level speed, snatched the bottle from Jiraiya's hand, and looked at the empty bottles on the floor, heart aching with pain. This was a fine vintage I've been collecting for over 10 years. Don't be so stingy, old man. Jiraiya grinned drunkenly, throwing an arm over Hiruzen's shoulder. I helped you finish a mission today. Isn't it fine to drink a little as a reward? Mission. Hiruzen was taken aback, but quickly caught on. Did you contact Yami? Yeah, just came back. Taking advantage of Hiruzen's distraction, Jiraiya took back the bottle and took another swig. That kid's not bad. Really not bad. What's so good about him? Hiruzen asked, intrigued. It was rare for Jiraiya to praise someone like that. Just the fact that he sees everyone in the village as his own people isn't that enough? Hiruzen frowned. What happened? Tell me everything from the start. Jiraiya had no choice but to recount the events, roughly conveniently skipping the part where Yami used his book as a hypnotic sleep aid. The more Hiruzen listened, the wider his smile grew, the wrinkles on his face folding together. Good kid. That's right. He's Danzō's grandson. Even if their methods differ, he still has Konoha in his heart. A weight lifted from his heart, and Hiruzen felt more at ease. He snatched the bottle back from Jiraiya and poured himself a glass. What? You planning to take him as a disciple now? Jiraiya hesitated for a moment before shaking his head. Forget it. He's an interesting little guy, but he doesn't suit my style. Besides, Danzō wouldn't agree. I don't want to deal with that old man. Well, it's up to you. Hiruzen didn't push the matter but started thinking about when he might try to rope Yami in himself. After all, Hyuga Hisashi isn't exactly one of us, and his strength isn't quite enough. Chapter 49, Chapter 49, Side Character Kurane, Bonus. Hiruzen felt more at ease regarding Yami, but what he believed to be his own people was not necessarily the same as what Yami considered his own people. In Yami's view, his own people were those who stood firmly by his side no matter what happened. There was no conflict of interest with the villagers now, but if there ever was in the future. If they didn't choose his side, then they would naturally become enemies. After returning home, Yami copied the medicinal bath formula and handed it to Yujao. Go to the pharmacy and buy the herbs yourself tomorrow. Soak once a day. The effect will fade after about 30 days. With training, your chakra volume should double. The reason it could double was because Yujao's chakra was too low. Based on Yami's estimate, she only had about 3 standard jnan's worth. Yujao carefully memorized the herbs, their quantities, and the preparation method written on the note. After reciting it a few times, she tore the note to shreds right in front of Yami. Yami-kun, please rest assured. I won't let a third person know the recipe for this medicinal bath. Yami smiled but said nothing. He felt quite pleased inside. The third stage of the bond was enough to prove Yujao's sincerity, but her attitude was what really stood out. The night passed without incident. On the weekend, Yami spent nearly the entire day with Izumi, playing in the morning and training in the afternoon. In just 2 days, with Izumi's accelerator effect, he had initially mastered using the mind's eye of the Kagura and also learned 2 water release techniques. Meanwhile, Yujao followed Yami's instructions and prepared the medicinal bath. She soaked every morning for an hour, then went to the training ground to deplete her chakra using ninjutsu, followed by chakra refinement, and repeated the cycle. In just 2 days, she already felt her chakra had significantly increased, and her physical strength had improved as well. These changes made Yujao genuinely happy. By the 3rd day, it was Monday. After her morning medicinal bath, Yujao didn't go to the training ground. Instead, she changed into a chiffon dress and went to the market to buy ingredients. Today was the day she had invited Yami over for lunch at her home. Yujao felt that with her current ability, there wasn't much she could do to help Yami. So, she focused on the little things like preparing meals for him. She took this meal very seriously and made sure to buy beef and chicken wings, Yami's favorites. After returning home, she got to work. By the time the food was nearly ready, Yami arrived. The Uzuki residence was a two-story house with a small courtyard. Though not large, it was more than enough for Yujao, who now lived alone. In fact, many shinobi still lived in apartment buildings. Land in Konoha wasn't cheap, and all the prime spots had long been snapped up by those with original clan shares. Just 10 more minutes, the chicken wings will be ready. Yujao looked at Yami, who was glancing around the living room, and said in a gentle tone, "Sit in the living room for a bit. There are snacks on the coffee table." Yami muttered an acknowledgement, then turned away and pouted. That tone like she was coaxing a child. He was a child now, so it was fine. Just as Yami opened a bag of potato chips to munch on, there was another knock at the door. "Yami, can you help check who it is?" Yujao was busy with cold dishes and had to call out from the kitchen. Yami opened the door and both he and the person on the other side were surprised. "Kurane." "Yami." 10 minutes later, the dining table was filled with a sumptuous spread. The three of them sat at the table, and the atmosphere was slightly awkward. In the end, it was Kurane who broke the silence first. She looked at Yujao with a bit of grievance. "Yujao, where have you been these past few days? I came to visit you 3 times, but you weren't home any of those times." Yami snorted, clearly displeased. "You only came looking for Yujao, not me." Kurane shook her head like a rattle. "The guards at your Shimura residence have horrible attitudes. I went there once and never went back." Yami frowned slightly. "You came by? Those guards didn't even tell me. Useless. Can't even watch a gate properly. They deserve punishment." "That's not important," Kurane changed the subject, her gaze locking on Yujao, who now looked slightly uncomfortable. Suspiciously, she asked. "Why is Yami having lunch at your place? Why did you invite him and not me?" There was a hint of grievance at the end. Why was it like this? They were clearly good sisters, best friends, but Yujao only invited Yami for a meal. Yujao hesitated, unsure of what to say, but Yami spoke up first. "Yujao has been training in swordsmanship with me these past few days, unlike you, who only knows how to play around. As for today, people had different levels of bonds. Kurane's bond was only at the first stage, so she naturally couldn't know about the medicinal bath. Yami simply used training as an excuse." "What?" Kurane looked at Yami in shock, her rosy lips parting into a surprised "Oh. You two have been training together? And you didn't take me with you? Yujao even treated me to a full-course meal at Yakiniku." Yami added another blow. If Kurane were from the Uchiha clan, she'd probably awaken her Sharingan out of pure emotional damage. At this point, what else could Yujao say? She could only sigh and say, "Let's eat first." With that, she skillfully picked up a chicken wing and 2 slices of beef and placed them in Yami's bowl. She even pushed the napkin in front of him so he could use it at any time. Watching the scene blankly, a strange line of thought suddenly crossed Kurane's mind. It's clearly a movie about 3 people, but somehow I feel like a side character. Chapter 50, Hisashi's Resentment, Training Time. After the meal, Kurane strongly insisted on joining their 2-person training team. "You don't train in swordsmanship, so what's the point of tagging along?" "It's a waste of time," Yami said in confusion. Kurane argued, "I can train in genjutsu." "Yami, your mental strength is so strong you can be my sparring partner." Yami looked at her with disdain. "You just want to take advantage of me for free, don't you?" Pfft. Yujao, who was drinking water, spat it out. Luckily, no one was sitting across from her, otherwise, it would have been a disaster. "Yami, that kind of dirty talk, where did you even learn it?" She immediately thought of 2 suspects, Hisashi and Jiraiya. Those 2 pervy old men must have corrupted cute little Yami. "Then what do you want?" "At worst, I'll treat you to barbecue once a week," Kurane blushed, gritting her teeth as she made the promise. "No matter how tasty something is, you'll get sick of it if you eat it every day." Yami shook his head slightly. With Yujao already here, plus Hisashi still being a fat sheep, if Kurane joined, he could basically live in a barbecue shop. "What do you want then? Can you cook as well as Yujao?" Yami asked. Kurane's face turned pale. She turned away, both embarrassed and angry. No, but it's edible. I've been eating it for years and haven't ended up in the hospital. She had seen Kurene's cooking earlier. It wasn't any worse than the restaurants in the village, and it had a homely warmth to it. If she wasn't embarrassed, she would have wanted to pay Yujao to cook long-term. Yami and Yujao both frowned. What do you mean by haven't ended up in the hospital? Are you proud of that? Yami started counting on his fingers, complaining, your cooking isn't as good as Yujao's, you're not needed to clean, and you're not as gentle as her, so why should I help you? Ah! Kurene screamed and lunged at him. You little brat! I'll fight you! Host and Kurene have reached stage 2 of their rivalry bond. Reward, Genjutsu Tree Binding Death. After the chaos, Yami still agreed to let Kurene join him and Yujao's training team. The reason? During the fight, he discovered that Kurene's strength was just right for massages. Also, he had recently obtained Shisui's Genjutsu talent, so Kurene could serve as a sparring partner. The two struck a deal: 2 massages per week. However, Yami didn't share the medicinal bath formula. Their relationship hadn't reached that level yet. Over the next few days, Yami lived a 9-to-5 lifestyle, heading out to train at 9 in the morning, and picking up Izumi from school at 5 in the afternoon. Nothing changed until the 7-day period ended and Hisashi returned to his post. Outside the Hokage building, Hisashi saw Yami approaching with 2 girls and rolled his eyes dramatically, not caring who saw. You really are heartless. Were you hoping I wouldn't survive? You actually went and tattled to my brother about the Red District incident. Hisashi spoke with deep resentment. His legs were still wrapped in bandages and plaster. Of course, most of that was for show, meant for his brother Hayashi. In reality, the minor injuries could have been treated at Konoha Hospital. Just giving Hisashi-sensei a little lesson, Yami replied with a bright smile. My old man always said people can't teach people, but things can teach people. That's the future. Hisashi savored the words, then nodded in awe. As expected of Elder Dans. He really does speak in proverbs. Yami muttered to himself. How many times have I had to praise that old man by now? He was really breaking his back trying to make Dan's reputation look good. After some banter, Hisashi led the 3 of them inside to pick a mission. Yujao quietly said, Hisashi-sensei, we'd like to take missions near the village, so we still have time to train. We also don't want to take them too frequently. Is that okay? This was a plan the 3 had agreed on. The purpose of taking missions was just to accumulate experience and practical combat opportunities. They were currently in a period of rapid growth, so it would be a waste to spend too much time on missions. As long as they fulfilled the village's minimum requirements, that was enough. Hisashi nodded without hesitation. All right. After each mission, we'll take 3 days off. Let's also avoid time-consuming escort or guard missions. Thank you, Hisashi-sensei. Yujao and Kurene smiled gratefully. Another week passed in the blink of an eye. During that time, Hisashi's team only took on 2 missions, eliminating a rogue ninja and taking down a bounty hunter from Kankinso. Both were completed smoothly. The rest of the time was spent training in the village. Thanks to the substantial increase in physical strength and chakra, Yujao's dance of the crescent moon had improved significantly. After using shadow clones, even Yami couldn't tell which was the real body or which was the main attacker, and he could only rely on brute force to counter them. Although this sword technique was named after the Konoha style, it wasn't the typical Konoha swordsmanship seen everywhere. It was actually an A-rank technique created by Senju Tobirama. It definitely had its unique traits, but the flaws were obvious too. The technique relied on trickery, and its true lethality depended on the user's own level. What Yujao needed now was a sword technique with stronger killing power. After learning she had both fire and lightning attributes, Yami suggested she start with chakra nature transformation and try infusing chakra into her blade to enhance its power. Yujao discovered a new direction and began practicing enthusiastically. But Kurene was suffering. She had watched Yami evolve from a genjutsu novice to someone almost on par with her in just a few days. She had always thought she was a rare genjutsu prodigy in the village. But compared to Yami, she was nothing. Thankfully, she wasn't someone who collapsed easily from setbacks. After a short slump, she reignited her fighting spirit. Even if she would eventually be surpassed, she hoped that time would come later. Otherwise, it'd be way too embarrassing. In the blink of an eye, it was already the 14th of the month. That night, Yami stood on the windowsill, looking toward the land of water. Shisui-senpai, don't let me down. Otherwise, I really will kill Uchiha Itachi. Chapter 51, Chapter 51, Substituting one thing for another. Land of Water. Uchiha Shisui had been working hard during this time. After accepting the mission, he quietly left the village to make preparations. Rescuing Pakura without alerting either Tsunagakura or Kirigakura was extremely difficult. He couldn't rescue her immediately, he had to wait until she was seriously injured and unable to resist. Otherwise, he risked being attacked by a cage-level powerhouse and exposing himself. After racking his brain for a full night, Shisui finally came up with a meticulous plan. After leaving Konoha, Shisui didn't head straight to the Land of Water. Instead, he first traveled to Tsunagakura in the opposite direction. To rescue Pakura, he needed someone to die in her place. Randomly selecting a female ninja with a physique similar to Pakura's, Shisui used secret techniques, makeup, and genjutsu to shape her into a convincing Pakura. Then he took her to Kirigakura and hid in the shadows to observe the ambush site. Finally, the agreed-upon day arrived. In the silent early morning, mist blanketed the canyon, and the crisp sound of footsteps echoed in the distance. Pakura cautiously scanned her surroundings. Even the slightest disturbance would put her on high alert. Not encountering any danger along the way made her relax slightly. She didn't understand why the village arranged the handoff of important intelligence in a place so close to Kirigakura, but as a shinobi, she still accepted the difficult mission. Step, step, step. Pakura frowned and looked forward sharply. A figure stepped out of the mist. It was a man wearing a Kirigakura forehead protector. The man raised both hands, signaling he meant no harm. Don't misunderstand, I'm the one you're supposed to meet, the man quickly said, following with the designated passphrase. Pakura's expression eased, and she pulled a scroll from the ninja pouch at her waist and tossed it over. Here's what you need. Be careful when hiding. For her allies, Pakura was always gentle, unlike the ferocity of her Scorch release ninjutsu. As expected of Lady Pakura. You're truly thoughtful toward your subordinates. The man caught the scroll with a smile, gave no further pleasantries, and turned to leave. Pakura didn't dare linger either and also turned to evacuate. At that moment, tisk. Pakura's eyes widened in disbelief as she looked back. A kunao had been driven into her back by the man, who then kicked it hard, sending her flying. The man's expression froze for a second before bursting into wild laughter. Scorch release Pakura, did you really think I was from Tsunagakura? I'm a Jainin from the Land of Water. This canyon was the grave pre-arranged by Kirigakura and Tsunagakura just for you. Fire! At his order, a large number of Kirigakura shinobi emerged from the cliffs, hurling kunao and shuriken toward Pakura, riddling her body like a pincushion. Seeing the plan succeed, the man let out a long breath, his face filled with arrogance. He casually tossed the critical intel Pakura had risked everything to deliver in front of her. Take a good look for yourself. This was the unanimous decision of Tsunagakura's higher UPS, they sold you out in exchange for a peace agreement. You, a Scorch release ninja who killed so many of my comrades, ended up like this. Isn't that pathetic? Unfortunately, facing his mockery, Pakura no longer had the strength to respond. She could only weakly twitch her fingers before closing her eyes completely. A Kirigakura ninja in an Anbu uniform leapt down from the cliff, checked her condition, then nodded and said, Scorch release ninja Pakura is confirmed dead. Bury her somewhere random. If it were any other village, they definitely wouldn't waste the corpse of a Kekkei Genkai ninja. But Kirigakura had already begun implementing the blood mist policy, treating all Kekkei Genkai users with hostility and showing them no value. Gradually, the mist dispersed, and the canyon welcomed its first ray of morning sunlight. All nearby Kirigakura shinobi had already withdrawn, leaving behind only scattered kunao and bloodstains. Crack! Crack! The cliff face cracked open as Shisui emerged, carrying a massive scroll. He exhaled in relief. This was a sealing scroll specially prepared by Yami. It not only suppressed all signs of life from the person sealed inside but also ensured they remained unconscious. After confirming there were no Kirigakura stragglers nearby, Shisui swiftly departed with the scroll, returning to the Land of Fire. Konoha. Atop a small waterfall outside the village. Yujao and Kurane were training their chakra control. Both had already mastered basic water walking. Hot springs and still waters were no longer challenging, so they had moved on to turbulent waters. They needed to adjust the chakra output under their feet in real time according to the shifting flow rate. Since they had only just begun this training, Yujao and Kurane weren't very proficient and often fell into the water. Yami sat on a large rock nearby with a pile of leaves at his side, studying wind release nature transformation. By the waterfall stood a female ninja from the Hyuga clan, activating her Byakugan to observe Yujao and Kurane's chakra output. She was a special instructor invited by Hisashi. With the Byakugan, she could precisely detect issues in the girl's chakra flow much more accurate and efficient than their own self-awareness. Although Hisashi himself had a Byakugan, because Yujao and Kurane were both female, he had to ask a fellow branch member to assist. Even the third Hokage had put in effort to coordinate this, otherwise, a regular person wouldn't qualify to instruct in this capacity. When Yujao and Kurane found out, they were both very grateful to Sarutobi Hiruzen. But Yami suspected it was all for his sake. Otherwise, why would Hiruzen go so far for Kurane and Yujao? Their talent and strength weren't enough to warrant his attention. Still, Yami didn't refuse. He accepted all the sugar-coated benefits and sent the hidden barbs right back. Suddenly, a sharp whistle sounded from the woods nearby. Yami looked up to see 3 root shinobi leap toward him. They landed swiftly and knelt on one knee. Kurane and Yujao, still training, noticed the movement, exchanged a glance, and jumped back to shore. Yami-sama, the mission has been completed, the leading root ninja said quietly. You brought her back. Yami's eyes lit up. She's at the root base, currently receiving treatment. Got it. Yami jumped off the rock and shouted toward the other side of the waterfall, you two better not slack off. I've got something to handle and I'm heading back first. With that, he left the training grounds with the 3 root shinobi. What happened? Kurane murmured with a confused look. Why do I feel Yami seems really happy? Yujao shook her head. If it's something we need to know, Yami-kun will tell us. Let's focus on our training. With that, she stepped back into the waterfall. To be continued. Comment. 8 comment. Vote. Chapter 52, Chapter 52, Yami who wants to be filial, non-s questioning, bonus. In order to avoid drawing the attention of Hiruzen, even though Yami was a bit anxious, he pretended to act normally after entering the village and made his way to the root base. Unfortunately, he didn't see Pakura right away, she was still receiving treatment from the medical nin in the infirmary. After some thought, Yami took a detour and headed for the interrogation room. Shisui was there. Shisui-senpai. The person he wanted had been retrieved, so Yami was in a good mood and greeted politely. It's Yami-kun. A tired smile appeared on Shisui's face. After spending half a month on the run and rushing at full speed for a day after rescuing Pakura, even an elite Jainin couldn't hold up. You two step out. I'll take over the questioning. Yami waved off the 2 shinobi originally in charge of the interrogation, leaving only him and Shisui in the room. Shisui-senpai, tell me about the mission this time. Shisui nodded, gathered his thoughts, and began recounting the events slowly. He had intervened when the Mist Nin launched their surprise attack on Pakura. Using genjutsu, he manipulated one of them to kick Pakura into his hiding spot. Then, within moments, he swapped her out and inflicted identical injuries on a scapegoat's back to match hers. He quickly sealed the heavily injured Pakura into a scroll, then retreated with her through a hidden passage he had prepared in advance. He didn't dare move again until all the Mist Nin had left the area. Once he reached the border of the Land of Fire, he used the coded signal to contact the root handler, and from there, everything proceeded smoothly. As expected of Shisui-senpai. You accounted for both the environment and human behavior. Yami didn't hold back his praise. If you ask me, you should be the head of the Uchiha clan. You're way better than that bitter, vengeful uncle. Yami, don't joke around. Shisui gave a wry smile. Clan head Fugaku is a very competent leader. I respect him greatly. And I believe Itake will make an even better clan head in the future. Really? Yami didn't comment further. Since he was trying to be filial today, he chose not to continue the topic with Shisui. Thanks for your hard work on this mission, Shisui-senpai. Root will handle the rest. I believe you know what to do once you return. Shisui stood up and nodded. Understood. I've just been recovering these past few days, I haven't gone anywhere. He had done his part bringing Pakura back and didn't want to ask what Root planned to do next. Still, he sincerely hoped Yami would succeed and add a powerful asset to the village. After seeing Shisui off, Yami ran into another old acquaintance. The door of the infirmary swung open, and the medical nin who walked out turned out to be Yakushi Nan, who had been absent for some time. Director Nan, long time no see. Yami-sama. Unlike Yami, Nan didn't look happy at all, her expression was grim, even slightly hostile. Yami instantly understood. Looks like you've seen Kabuto. Yami-sama, Nan said angrily, why? Kabuto is just a child, he's even a year younger than you. Why bring him into route? When Nan returned to Konoha after completing her mission, she saw Kabuto among the route members, training hard like the other shinobi. It felt like her world had collapsed. She had always cherished the sensible Kabuto. Even when she wasn't around to care for him, Kabuto would lead the other children and even manage the older ones with precision. She felt sorry that such a young boy had to grow up so quickly. To support the orphanage and Kabuto, Nan had forced herself to complete the missions assigned by Danzō, hoping that by embracing darkness, she could trade it for a brighter future for others. But after witnessing that scene, she realized all her efforts had been meaningless. The only reason she managed to restrain her fury and not explode on the spot was the long-standing fear and pressure of Danzō en route, which kept her rational. I never forced him to do anything. Yami shook his head with an innocent expression. His big eyes calmly met Nan's angry gaze. He knew everything you did for the orphanage, and he made his own decision. Nan protested angrily, but without your approval, Kabuto never would have joined route. Why wouldn't I approve? Yami looked at her in confusion. In my eyes, Kabuto's value far surpasses that of your so-called elite spies. If someone like him is willing to join route, why would I push him away? Nan, I suggest you stop worrying about Kabuto. Yami waved her off. I'm easy to deal with, but my old man isn't so kind. Focus more on your missions. Don't wait until Kabuto grows strong enough to protect the orphanage on his own, only for the grass on your grave to be 3 feet tall by then. Live well. Live long enough to see Kabuto and the orphanage thrive. That's the best recognition of his efforts. With that, Yami lost interest in continuing the conversation. He walked around the stunned Nan and entered the ward. Inside the white room, black lines extended outward from Pakura's body, forming a network across the entire room. Yami instantly recognized the technique. Sealing technique, lion closing roar. For anyone trapped at the center of this formation, all chakra points in the body would be sealed, rendering them unable to use chakra. The curse mark would wrap around the target's body like chains. Pakura was still unconscious. The kunai that had pierced her back had been laced with poison, interfering with her chakra flow, enough to completely disable a cage-level shinobi. Yami wasn't too concerned about anything else, only whether that flawless back of hers would be left with a scar. After entering the room, he quickly flipped Pakura over and finally breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, Nan's medical skills weren't bad. Right now, the wound was just a bit red and swollen. No visible scarring remained. The guards hidden in the shadows watched this scene with odd expressions. They couldn't help but feel that their young master had some kind of serious illness. After finishing his inspection, Yami sat on the chair by the head of the bed and waited quietly. About half an hour later, a weak groan came from the bed. Pakura slowly opened her eyes. The intense light above her forced her to squint. As she tried to recall what had happened, a childish voice rang in her ears. You're awake. Chapter 53, Chapter 53, Pakura, you no longer have a home. As a shinobi, Pakura instinctively reached for her kunai pouch, attempting to draw a blade. But just as she sat up halfway, a powerful force pinned her back to the bed. The lines on the floor twisted like snakes, reinforcing the seal on her body. In the end, Pakura could only turn her head, her chakra as still as stagnant water, unable to gather at all. Looks like I need to give you some time to clear your head. Yami helped tuck the blanket over her again. Don't worry, I've got plenty of time today, you can take your time. After that, Yami pulled out a comic book from his pouch and started reading. The entertainment industry in the shinobi world was actually quite developed, with both comics and movies. Konoha even had special stunt shinobi to take on filming jobs. The ninjutsu they used looked spectacular, but had no real lethality. Pakura turned her head to glance at Yami's tender young face, then looked away and closed her eyes, lost in thought. After an unknown period of silence, a hoarse voice came from her lips. Is this Konoha? Pakura recalled the last thing she remembered before losing consciousness, the flash of a Konoha forehead protector and the scarlet Sharingan. Yami put down his book and nodded gently. Remember now? You're indeed in Konoha. This is the root base. Don't even think about escaping. Not even at your peak could you manage that. Root. Pakura's expression shifted slightly. She'd encountered root operatives during missions before. Those root shinobi weren't as strong as her, but they were terrifying in how they carried out missions, willing to sacrifice their lives without hesitation. They didn't seem like shinobi anymore, more like emotionless machines. Pakura couldn't help but scrutinize Yami. You don't look like a root shinobi at all, you're completely different from them. For a kid this young to be in a place like this, you must be some high-ranking officer's child. Strictly speaking, I'm not a root shinobi. Yami picked up an apple from the windowsill and started eating. My name is Yami. Dan's is my grandfather. You're alive today because of me. At the end of last month, I took a mission and captured a spy from the land of water. From her, I learned that you were betrayed. The glint of surprise in Pakura's eyes at hearing his identity quickly dimmed. She tried to force herself to forget what had happened before she lost consciousness, to face Yami as a Tsunagakuer shinobi. But that was impossible. Oni-san. Yami took a bite of the apple and sighed like a little adult. You're really pitiful. You're a cage-level shinobi, and there's not a single person in Tsunagakuer who wants to protect you. They all wanted you dead. Pakura clenched her teeth. Host has established a hostile bond with Pakura. Reward, wind attribute chakra, ultimate. Kekkei Genkai refers to special chakra formed through the fusion of different chakra natures. They aren't constrained by the 5-element theory, and their power is generally far greater than that of standard ninjutsu. Most Kekkei Genkai users are genetic anomalies who naturally possess the ability to combine chakra natures. However, there are rare cases where intense effort, talent, and training can achieve the same result. Scorch releases a fusion of wind and fire attributes. Yami wasn't concerned about Pakura's hostility. This was only the beginning. He didn't have Naruto's gift of persuasion. If he wanted to win Pakura over, he needed to use some explosive information to completely shatter her worldview. You went to great lengths to have that Uchiha risk his life to save me. What, you want me to serve Konoha? Pakura asked, her tone more composed. Not Konoha-me, Yami patiently explained. The guards my old man assigned to me are average at best. They're just cannon fodder to take a kunao for me. I think you're perfect. Don't be delusional. Pakura snorted coldly. Do you really think saving my life means anything to me? Worst case, I die. Don't think you can control me. I already said don't worry. Yami finished his apple, stood up, and stretched. I just came to make friends today. There are still plenty of days ahead. I've got time. As he spoke, Yami reached out to pinch Pakura's lips. Despite her struggling, he began forming seals with one hand. The Shimura clan's ancestral technique, Cursed Tongue Eradication Seal. It could not only prevent subordinates from speaking carelessly, but also seal chakra. After he finished, Yami waved to Pakura. You can give up on escaping. Even if you succeed, where would you go? There's no home for you in this world. As soon as he finished speaking, the door shut again. Inside the room, Pakura stared up at the ceiling, her heart full of conflicting emotions. Yes, even if she escaped, where could she go? Outside the door, Yami was startled to find someone waiting. Dan stood in the shadows, leaning on his cane with both hands. Old man, how long have you been there? Since you went in. After Dan's finished speaking, he began walking ahead. Yami followed helplessly behind. Yami, you didn't learn any good habits from Hisashi, but you did pick up his hesitation. Dan snorted coldly, clearly dissatisfied with Yami's attitude toward Pakura earlier. Too soft. What you need are tools, subordinates who obey your every order, not liabilities with emotions and thoughts. Countless shinobi have failed missions because of their feelings. Hitaki Sakumo is the best example. The moment Hitaki Sakumo's name was mentioned, Yami, who usually listened to Dan's half-heartedly, became animated. Old man, since you brought it up, tell me everything. Yami's face was full of nosy curiosity. When I was going through Root's files, I saw a lot of villagers saying you were the one who killed Hitaki Sakumo. Is that true? Dan paused, his expression momentarily unnatural. Nonsense. He committed suicide. Everyone knows he was denounced for abandoning the mission. What does that have to do with me? Why do you care about someone who's been dead for over a decade? You brought him up first, so I asked, Yami replied, pouting. Danzō didn't respond. He simply walked toward a deep cave. A long time later, his voice echoed from within. A tree doesn't just have trunks and leaves, it has roots. Though they never meet, they are still part of the same whole. Yami understood the implication. Hiruzen and Danzō, one light, one dark. Danzō had supported many of Hiruzen's so-called achievements, but Hiruzen pretended to stay innocent while letting Danzō do all the dirty work behind the scenes. Suddenly, Yami had a thought. There may never have been a real Danzō, he was merely a scapegoat for all the hidden sins, a shadow created so the village could remain pure on the surface. Interesting. Yami didn't follow Danzō into the cave. He stood there, chuckling. The old man has borne so much for Konoha, it's time for me to enjoy some sunlight. If Sarutobi Hiruzen can be Hokage, why can't I, a Shimura? The next day, Hisashi's team still didn't take on any missions, they continued training. Yujao and Kurane naturally asked about what happened yesterday. Yami had no intention of exposing Pakura's existence, so he casually brushed them off with an excuse. After lunch, Yami returned to the root base. Pakura had regained the ability to move, but her chakra was sealed, so her strength was only at the level of a normal Chunin. The root operatives had locked her in a room, not a prison cell, but an ordinary single room. Someone would bring her food regularly. Seeing Yami again, Pakura didn't act coldly. Instead, she asked calmly, "Don't you have missions or training? Why are you so free, coming to see me, a powerless prisoner?" Yami pulled over a chair, sat across from her, and placed the lunch box he brought on the table. "There are so many shinobi in Konoha. I can afford to slack off." "That's true." Pakura nodded, her tone tinged with jealousy. The land of fire has a unique geographical advantage. Unlike the land of wind, where even surviving is a challenge. That's why Konoha had to open multiple war fronts every time. The best land in the shinobi world was all under Land of Fire's control. Who wouldn't be envious? Especially the Land of Wind, which was almost entirely desert, where people even struggled to feed themselves. That's why, even as the weakest among the 5 great hidden villages, they were often the first to start wars. If they didn't vent their internal problems externally, they'd be crushed by the harsh natural environment. "Still thinking about Tsunagakuer?" Yami asked curiously. Pakura was silent for a moment, then shook her head. "Just a subconscious comparison, I guess. After all, I lived there for almost 20 years. You're not even 20 yet." Yami looked surprised, clearly suspicious. "These legs, that back, that intensity. No way you're not even 20. Pakura was immediately annoyed by his stare. "Do I look old to you?" Yami instinctively glanced at her perfect figure. "Not really." Pakura's mood lightened a little. She raised her head proudly. "That's just my natural talent." "True." Yami nodded sincerely. To have that kind of figure before 20, that was definitely talent. "So what exactly is your grudge with Raza that made him hate you enough to betray you with the entire upper echelon?" "How should I know? He used to be my teammate." Yami didn't stay long. After watching Pakura finish her meal, he left. In the days that followed, he continued to visit occasionally. He also instructed the root shinobi that as long as Pakura didn't leave the base or approach any important areas, she could move freely within the restricted zones. Danzō was extremely dissatisfied with Yami's insistence but didn't stop him. In his eyes, this was destined to be a futile effort. Even if successful, it wouldn't last. Pakura had betrayed Tsunagakuer, she could betray Yami one day, too. The reason he didn't intervene was that he wanted Yami to learn a lesson through this. Once Yami suffered a setback because of Pakura, he would mature and gradually grow into the kind of person Danzō expected. Half a year passed in the blink of an eye. The intensity of the war had decreased further. More shinobi returned to the village from the front lines. It was clear that the coming years would be relatively stable, entering a period of peaceful development. However, the major villages didn't dare let their guard down. The shinobi wars had broken out too frequently. The Third Shinobi World War had started just a few years after the second. No one wanted a repeat. The arms race never stopped. That day, Hisashi's team gathered as usual. "Yami, congratulations on completing your 300th mission." Once everyone arrived, Hisashi smiled and said, "The village's forces are now sufficient. The Chunin exams haven't been held in over a year. Yesterday, the third Hokage gathered the Genin and discussed resuming the exams soon." You'll be promoted to Chunin in no time. The Chunin exams are finally back. Yami, who had grown significantly taller and now stood nearly 1.5 meters, complained lightly. With excellent living conditions and his Senju bloodline developing well, his growth far outpaced normal children. He was only 8 but looked more like 10. For comparison, Uzumaki Naruto was about the same height when he graduated. Yami was very happy about his upcoming promotion. Promotion meant accelerated training speed. Lately, he had been focused on his swordsmanship, which was starting to take shape. He hadn't paid much attention to what was going on in the village. Kurane and Yujao were both happy for him. They knew just how strong Yami was. Not only was Chunin well within reach, even Jainin wasn't out of the question. He was stronger than Kakashi had been at the same stage. There simply hadn't been an opportunity for him to be promoted until now. However, there was one thing that made them uneasy. Yujao asked softly, Hisashi-sensei, Kurane and I are both Chunin. Normally, the Chunin exams require a full team. What will Yami do? Should he join another team? Hisashi was momentarily stunned. He hadn't thought of that. He'd just assumed this sort of thing wouldn't be a problem for the Shimura heir. But since Yujao had brought it up, he began to panic a little. I originally planned to take you all on another mission first and let Yami take the exam after we returned. Let's go ask the Hokage about this together. Kurane, didn't Kakashi take the exam alone back then? Yami asked curiously. Kurane thought for a moment and shook her head. No. Kakashi had 2 teammates, but they both failed during the first 2 rounds. Only he made it through and got promoted. Yami didn't fully understand, so he just shrugged and followed along to ask Hiruzen how to resolve it. The group arrived at the Hokage's office. With Yami as a living signboard, they were quickly granted entry and met with Hiruzen. Hokage-sama. Hisashi respectfully voiced his concern. After listening, Hiruzen looked at Yami with a smile. I've already arranged teammates for you. As it happens, someone from Uchiha Itachi's team died. Since you're classmates with Itachi, you'll form a temporary team with him. Hearing this, Yami's brow slowly furrowed. Chapter 54, Then I'll take some root ninjas to participate in the Chunin exam and ambush. Old man, can't I just take the exam alone? Yami didn't want to be teamed up with Itachi. Hiruzen shook his head. There's no precedent for that. Everyone participating in the exam must register as a team. That's the rule. Unless you'd rather be promoted through accumulated mission merits, Hiruzen added as he flipped through the mountain of documents on his desk and pulled out Yami's file to review. At the rate your team is completing missions, it'll take at least another 6 months for you to qualify for Chunin based on merit alone. In the past half year, Yami had become more and more lazy, only completing 10 C rank and 2 B rank missions. Seriously, can't you bend the rules a little? Yami asked again. No. Hiruzen's tone was firm. He didn't want Yami relying on connections for everything. Otherwise, not only would his own dignity as Hokage be damaged, but Yami would also develop a disregard for rules, expecting privilege to solve everything. So he was absolutely unwilling to compromise on the team requirement for the Chunin exam. Fine then. Yami shrugged casually. I'll go to Root and pull 2 shinobi from there. They don't have ninja registration files, so technically they count as genin, right? With that, he turned to leave. Wait. Hiruzen instantly dropped his firm stance and rushed to stop him. This won't do. It's way too unfair to the other participants. Root had its own training system, and it was extremely harsh. Those who survived and became official members were elite among elites. At the genin and chunin level, their quality far exceeded that of regular shinobi. Yami alone was already beyond standard. According to the reports from Hisashi, Yami's strength was already close to that of a Jainin. If he teamed up with 2 root members, would any of the other participants even survive? Isn't this within the rules? Yami spread his hands. I'm just following your conditions. This isn't allowed, that's not allowed. Being a shinobi is really troublesome. Yami picked up the forehead protector hanging from his waist. I don't want to stay in Konoha anymore. I'm becoming a rogue ninja. Wait. Hiruzen could no longer stay seated. He rushed forward and snatched Yami's forehead protector from him. What a troublemaker. Saying he'd become a rogue ninja just because something didn't go his way. If Dan's found out, he'd flip the village upside down. It's my fault, don't get so worked up. Hiruzen smiled bitterly. Forget about the team requirement. I'll allow you to participate as a special entry, and you'll be judged based on individual performance only. Happy now? Yami immediately lit up with a bright smile. Thanks, Grandpa Third. Hiruzen, this kid, was he faking all that just now? Before he could think further, Yami had already pulled Yujao and Kurane away. They arrived at the mission assignment center, where Hisashi accepted a mission he had selected earlier. Transport strategic supplies to the front lines near the land of Earth. Hisashi wanted Yami to experience the battlefield atmosphere without taking on missions that were too dangerous, so transporting supplies was the best option. Aside from their team, there were 3 other genin teams led by Chunin joining the mission. It was a joint operation. The work was divided between the teams. Hisashi's team was responsible for security, while the other 3 teams handled transport. The 4 arrived at the rendezvous point. When they saw Hisashi, a Chunin in a green vest with a scar on his face walked up. Hisashi-sama. Yes. Hisashi nodded. Are all the preparations complete? Ready to move out? We're ready. We can leave anytime. Then let's head out. The front line is waiting on these supplies, we can't afford delays. Yes. Soon after, the convoy left Konoha village. Hisashi walked at the front of the team, activating his Byakugan every few steps to monitor the surroundings. Yami followed behind to cover his blind spot. Due to the caged bird seal, Hisashi's Byakugan had a single blind spot directly behind him. Yujao and Kurane stayed on either side of the convoy, ready to provide backup at any time. The other 3 teams were organized as well. The genin handled the carts, and the Chunin oversaw the supplies. The 3 wagons carried kunao, shuriken, and explosive tags, especially the latter. If even one was accidentally ignited, it could cause a chain reaction and blow up everything. So the convoy moved slowly, carefully avoiding sparks or friction. At night, the teams took turns keeping watch. To ensure Yami got proper rest, Kurane and Yujao covered his night shifts. 5 days later, the convoy had covered about 2/3 of the journey. As they moved along, Hisashi activated his Byakugan as usual. His expression changed, and he immediately signaled everyone to enter alert mode. 30 chakra signatures appeared at the edge of his detection range, about 4 kilometers away. There happened to be a forest in that direction. It was also the fastest route to the border. The moment the others saw the signal, their nerves tensed. Yami quietly approached Hisashi and asked with lip movements. Are there enemies? 21. Hisashi replied the same way. 2 Jainin level chakras, 3 Takubitsu Jainin, and 16 Chunin. Yami tapped the trees beside the road and activated the mind's eye of the Kagura, universal version, sensing the same life signatures as Hisashi had reported. Seeing Hisashi's hesitant expression, Yami nudged him with his elbow. What are you hesitating for? Pretend we don't know, they're waiting for an ambush, so we'll ambush them first. No, it's too dangerous. There are 2 Jainin. You stall them, and Yujao and I will handle the small fry. Then we'll each take 1 Jainin. Hisashi thought about the recent growth of Yujao and Kurane and realized Yami's plan was solid. Even if they couldn't take down both Jainin, they could at least drive them off. With that, Hisashi stopped hesitating. He nodded slightly and approved the plan. The team continued moving at the same pace as before, but Hisashi silently signaled behind him to organize their ambush strategy. And so, the convoy slowly entered the forest. Chapter 55, Yami's Ninja Scroll. Deep within the lush forest, Iwagakuer shinobi were lying in ambush atop the thick trees lining both sides of a winding path. One of the shinobi was forming hand seals, his eyes dull and unfocused. He was the sensory type in the squad, using a technique to share vision with nearby beasts and scout through their eyes. After Hisashi's group entered the forest and advanced about 1 kilometer, the sensory ninja's eyes regained their clarity. Lord Ishigaki, Konoha's shinobi are approaching. How many? 16. The sensory ninja reported, judging by their attire, most are genin, and there's even a child who looks no older than 10. Ishigaki quickly compared both sides' combat strength in his mind. It's likely a standard Konoha team, probably led by a Jainin, but our mission is to destroy their supplies. As long as we keep them occupied, burning the supplies and eliminating the genin won't be an issue. Everyone, get ready. We attack as soon as the target enters the ambush zone. At his command, the Iwanin immediately began preparing for combat. Half an hour later. Hisashi's team had entered the Iwanan's field of view. A few hundred meters more, and they would step into the ambush circle. The enemy was ready. Prepare. Ishigaki's cold voice echoed softly. But before he could give the signal to strike, a sudden chill crept up his spine, an intense sense of danger making the hairs on his neck stand. He spun around quickly, trying to identify the source of this unease, and then, at his 5 o'clock, a 10-year-old boy appeared on a tree branch, hands completing a seal. Fire release, dragon flame song technique. Yami leaned back, then abruptly lunged forward, spewing out 4 ferocious fire dragons, roaring toward the rock nin. Crab. We've been discovered. Defensive positions, now. Earth release, earth-style wall. Shocked by the enemy flanking them, Ishigaki had no time to question how they'd been exposed. The fire dragons were already surging toward them, forcing him to immediately organize a defense. With loud booms, multiple earth walls rose up, blocking the raging flames. The fire release was overwhelming. Despite several earth walls being destroyed, the fire dragons gradually dissipated. Bang! At the same time, the ordinary Chunin from Hisashi's side cancelled their transformation techniques, revealing their true identities. Only now did the Iwanan realize how they had been exposed. Against the strongest Byakugan perception user, their ambush was basically a delivery. 8 trigrams, empty palm. Hisashi swung his palms forward in rapid succession, sending out waves of invisible force, the compressed air striking toward the enemy lines. Earth release, gathering rock technique. It's useless. Hyuga are good at perception, but weak in actual combat. Just keep him at a distance, kill him. Ishigaki used an earth mountain to block the vacuum palms and barked orders to his squad. All the Iwanan charged, hurling ninjutsu, explosive tags, and kunai straight at the supply convoy. Yujao drew her blade and danced across the battlefield, deflecting projectiles and preparing for close combat. Yujao! Hold up! Buzz! Amid the rumbling of explosions, a sharp buzzing sound stood out. Janin-level Iwanan Shigetsu glanced toward it. The 10-year-old boy extended his arms, each hand holding a massive wind demon shuriken. Both shurikens spun violently, wind whirling around them, reinforced with sharp wind release chakra that extended their cutting edges. Wind release, vacuum great sphere. Both shuriken were launched. Whoosh! With wind release reinforcement, the massive spinning blades sliced through the enemy's earth walls like paper, tearing through defenses and unleashing screams from within the Iwa ranks. Damn it! Stop those things! Ishigaki roared, his blade shattering as soon as it touched the wind blades. He ducked instinctively to avoid being sliced apart. Hnin behind him wasn't so lucky, cut clean in half. What kind of nature transformation was this? Ishigaki stared in horror, pupils dilated, fixated on Yami with disbelief. In that brief opening, Hisashi had already closed in, pushing through multiple earth walls to engage Shigetsu in close combat. At the same time, 8 trigrams, 64 palms surrounded Ishigaki, temporarily locking down both enemy Janin. After cutting down 7 Chunin and 1 Takubutsu Janin, Yami's twin shuriken spun far into the forest, severing dozens of trees before crashing into the ground. Only then did Yujao, Kurane and the other 3 Konoha Chunin dare to enter the battlefield. It was terrifying. They weren't afraid of dying to the enemy, they were more afraid of dying to Yami's friendly fire. 1 each. Yujao took on 1 Takubutsu Janin. Kurane handled another. Yami made no move to help. The two were strong enough to use this fight for training. Yami unsheathed his Kusanagi sword and began harvesting the remaining Chunin. Using the body flicker technique and his sharp swordsmanship, none of them could survive beyond 3 exchanges. Some tried desperate counterattacks, but their blades only struck after images. Within 30 seconds, all 9 remaining Iwanan Chunin were slain. The 3 Konoha Chunin stood frozen. He's too strong. What were they even doing here? Watching might be more valuable. After clearing out the small fry, Yami didn't waste a moment. He leapt over the corpses and joined the battle between Hisashi and Shigetsu. Sensei, I'll take Ishigaki. Knowing how his system worked, Yami had done his homework. He regularly browsed Root's intelligence on other villages and was familiar with enemy personnel. He had seen both Janin in the Iwagakure intel files. Ishigaki, remember this, Shimura Yami is the one who will kill you. Hisashi gave way, fully focusing on Shigetsu. The pressure on him dropped instantly. The Hyuga clan's gentle fist specialized in close-range combat. Fighting two Jainin at once had genuinely been overwhelming. Brat, you die today. Ishigaki, kill him. The two Iwanin Jainin erupted with murderous intent, their hatred for Konoha peaking. Why did Konoha have so many prodigies? How could a child have such terrifying strength? If he were allowed to grow, he might become another fourth Hokage. Even if they died here, they had to eliminate Shimura Yami. Host and Ishigaki have established a deadly enemy bond. Reward, Earth Attribute Chakra, excellent, 0.5 Standard Unit Jainin Chakra. Host and Shigetsu have established a deadly enemy bond. Reward, Earth Attribute Chakra, excellent, Earth Release, Earthquake Core. 2 bond rewards were triggered, confirming how intense their hatred for Yami was. Clang! The Kusanagi sword clashed with a kunao. Ishigaki tried to use his superior physical strength to quickly kill Yami, but he soon realized that, while he had the edge in raw power, Yami's speed and body flicker technique were too fast. He already had multiple wounds, and had it not been for instinct and battle experience avoiding vital points, he would have been critically injured. He quickly switched tactics, stalling. Earth Release, Earth Flow River. The solid ground turned to sticky mud, forcing Yami to leap onto a tree. The swamp also limited his body flicker movement. As expected from a seasoned Jainin, one jutsu had already neutralized his speed advantage. Ishigaki continued weaving hand seals. Earth Release, Earth Dragon Bullet. Mud bombs launched from the swamp. Yami responded instantly, forming hand seals and pressing his palms forward. Wind Pressure Scroll. A strong gust gathered into a solid wind barrier, blocking the projectiles. Then, several wind blades followed, tearing across the forest. In the elemental chart, water overcomes fire, fire overcomes wind, wind overcomes lightning, lightning overcomes earth, earth overcomes water. There was no direct counter between earth and wind. It came down to who had the superior chakra transformation and ninjutsu mastery. Yami was like a ninjutsu machine gun, firing wind release after wind release, forcing Ishigaki to hide behind earthen walls, cursing in frustration. Where is this kid getting all this chakra from? He's like a many-tailed beast. Luckily, Earth Release users were known for their defense. Wind Release, Thousand Faces Gale. Wind Release, Vacuum Wave. Wind Release, Whirlwind Slash. Hey? Kurane blinked in confusion. She had just prepared an illusion to finish her opponent, then a stray wind blade flew over and cut him in half. Yami! Stop kill stealing! Kurane yelled in frustration. But Yami was already immersed in the fight. His hands formed seals so fast they blurred. There was no such ideal target to practice on in the village. Suddenly, he dropped to the ground and pressed his hands against the muddy swamp. Lightning Release, False Darkness. A dazzling arc of lightning surged up, forming a spear that shot straight at Ishigaki. He knows Lightning Release too. Ishigaki was stunned. He hadn't expected Yami to know Lightning Release, the natural counter to Earth. Still, his Jainin level experience kicked in. He slapped his hands to the ground. Earth Release, Earthquake Core. The earth beneath him surged upward, shielding him from the lightning strike while also lifting him out of his defenses. You turtle, you finally showed yourself. Not good. Ishigaki looked up just in time to see Yami airborne, speeding toward him, Kusanagi sword wrapped in a fierce wind. Flickering moment, flash slash. A slash of wind blades rained down like a storm. Ishigaki was cleaved in two, and the sword energy carved a long trench through the forest. Host has killed Ishigaki. Reward, Earth Release Digging Earth Technique. Ishigaki. Shigetsu, who had been fighting Hisashi, screamed in horror. Distracted, he took 2 direct gentle fist strikes to the chest. Don't scream. You're next. Be companions on the road to the underworld. Swoosh. Yami vanished again. A streak of blue light shot forward, cutting everything in its path. In an instant, he appeared in front of Shigetsu. With a surge of sword force, the kunao in Shigetsu's hand was cleaved in half like paper. Yami's blade slit his throat, blood gushing. Ugh! Shigetsu groaned weakly, eyes full of hatred. Then, he collapsed with eyes wide open. At this point, the only remaining opponent was the Takubutsu Jainin fighting Yujao. Knowing he had no chance of survival, the enemy tried a suicidal strike, but Kurane, still bitter from earlier, landed an illusion and finished him painlessly. Bang! Yami kicked a body aside, sheathed his sword, and calmed his surging chakra. For this level to qualify as Jainin Iwagakure's really starving. Hisashi awkwardly defended the enemy. Ahem, Yami, don't underestimate your opponent. Have you considered that maybe you're just too strong? What else could he say, that Ishigaki and Shigetsu were weak? Then what did it say about him, who had trouble fighting them? Hisashi now looked at Yami like he was a monster. He had thought he understood Yami's strength. But now it felt like he'd been blind. Lightning release? Chakra reserves rivaling a Jainin? This was way beyond anything he expected. He had no doubt if he fought Yami one-on-one, he'd end up like the others, never getting up again. Sensei, Yami said flatly. Your expression is making me uncomfortable. Thinking something weird? No, no. Hisashi panicked and quickly came up with an excuse. I was just thinking, anyone taking the Chunin exams with you is really unlucky. He meant it. Having someone who could kill Jainin take the Chunin exam, it was like bullying children. Kurane and Yujeo joined them, and the other 3 Chunin began cleaning the battlefield. Kurane commented, Yami, since you're close to the 3rd Hokage, why not just ask him to promote you to Jainin? You're going to crush those kids' dreams. Yami rolled his eyes. Compared to them, I'm still a child. Kurane, fair. She smiled and ruffled his hair. You're not just a child, you're a baby. Yami slapped her hand away in annoyance. If I don't grow taller in the future, I'll throw you off Hokage Rock. If I break my legs, I'll live off your rice for the rest of my life. No. Okay, enough. Seeing the two about to bicker again, Hisashi stepped in. We still have things to handle. Looking at the battlefield, he said gravely, the mission briefing didn't mention enemy ambushes. This clearly targeted our supply convoy. We must report this to the Hokage immediately. Let's move out. We don't have a communication summoning beast, so we'll have to rely on the front line. Hearing that, Yami and Kurane stopped. Hisashi sealed Shigetsu's body into a scroll, hoping to extract intel, then led the team out of the forest. The genin who had been guarding the carriages had disappeared, they were actually Yami's shadow clones in disguise. The real supplies had been placed outside the forest, guarded by the genin. On the battlefield, the genin couldn't help, they'd only be a liability. Yami had swapped the targets based on the enemy's limited scouting range, a trick inspired by Uchiha Shisui. Soon, the convoy resumed its journey. Hisashi was even more cautious now, keeping his Byakugan activated almost constantly. Their rest was cut down to just 4 hours a day. The team endured, but even the horses were foaming at the mouth. Finally, 2 days later, the convoy reached the front lines safely. After handing over the supplies, Hisashi went to find the commander in charge, Konoha Elite Jainin. Chapter 56, Chapter 56, First Meeting with Konoha's Blue Beast. Hayama Shirakumo, one of Konoha's elite Jainin, is nearly 30 this year and considered a core figure of the middle generation in the village. The reason he's not widely known is because a peer of his generation outshined everyone so dazzlingly that it eclipsed the rest of them. That peer was Namikaze Minato. Anyone who encountered Namikaze Minato back then could immediately abandon their mission and retreat to the village without punishment. Looking at the entire shinobi world, he was the only one at that time who received such treatment. In the future, Uchiha Shisui would also achieve this feat, but only the Land of Water would issue such an order. With such a genius present, even someone as talented as Hayama Shirakumo seemed mediocre by comparison. However, being chosen by the Sandome and appointed as a frontline commander was already enough to prove his capability. Not only was his individual strength excellent, but his use of leaf flash and swordsmanship was extraordinary. More importantly, Hayama Shirakumo had a strategic mind that many shinobi lacked. He was steady and served as one of Konoha's cornerstones. He had been stationed at the front line for the past 2 years, calmly responding to several covert attacks from Iwagakure. Although Hisashi wasn't personally close to Hayama, they had worked together on multiple occasions. After a brief greeting, Hisashi got straight to the point and detailed the entire ambush process. The faint smile on Hayama's face quickly vanished, replaced with a solemn expression. The scar on the side of his face twisted slightly. After Hisashi finished speaking, Hayama turned to the large map behind him, pacing as he analyzed the situation. According to our intel, the 2 Iwa Jainin have retreated from the front lines with their teams and returned to Iwagakure. This looks like a smokescreen, meant to distract us and launch a surprise attack from the rear. Hisashi spoke in a deep tone, now they're dead, but we can't be certain that they were the only IWA shinobi who infiltrated the Land of Fire. We still need to report the information back to Konoha as soon as possible and raise the alert level. Hayama nodded. He understood. He immediately summoned the intel team, relayed the information back to Konoha through summoning beast communication, and arranged several patrol squads. Their tasks were completed quickly. They finally had time to talk casually. Those two Jonin were killed by Shimura Yami. Hayama asked curiously. He'd spent little time in the village over the years and had never heard of such a group before. Strictly speaking, except for one special Jonin, all the other IWA shinobi died at his hands. Hisashi sighed and shook his head. With a grandson like that, Elder Dan's truly has a worthy successor. Hearing that, Hayama grew even more interested in Yami. Tell me about the fight. An 8-year-old child, and that strong? Did he awaken a Kekkei Genkai? No. Hisashi shook his head slightly. Yami's talent lies mainly in his ninjutsu and swordsmanship. As Hisashi described Yami's battle, Hayama's eyes lit up. He specialized in wind release, swordsmanship, and the body flicker technique exactly like himself. The only difference was that Yami was also proficient in other elemental releases, while Hayama focused solely on wind release combined with swordsmanship. Meanwhile, while Hisashi went to report, Yami and the others found themselves idle at the camp. Soon enough, something caught their attention. This is passion. This is youth. I actually completed yesterday's goal. No, I'll train 3 more rounds. A strange being in a green jumpsuit with his forehead protector worn as a belt was bouncing around the camp on his hands, landing each time with a single finger touching the ground. Sweat poured down his face, leaving a long trail behind him. The other shinobi in the camp had long grown used to this sight. Only Yami and the 2 girls, being newcomers, were caught off guard. Yujao winced, holding her forehead, muttering, I don't know him, I don't know him. But fate has a way of doing the exact opposite of what you want. The oddball noticed the trio. Hey! Kurane! You've come to the front lines to protect Konoha. I'm so moved and excited. After that, Might Guy seemed to be hit with a burst of energy and sped up his training even further. It took him a full 15 minutes to circle the camp 3 times. He ended with a series of backflips and landed in front of them, giving a thumbs up. Yami and Yujao felt dizzy. This guy's teeth were glowing. Kurane! It's been a while. Are these 2 your new teammates? Hello, I'm the Blue Beast of Konoha, Might Guy. Hello, Senior Guy, I'm Ozuki Yujao, Yujao replied, slightly dazed. I'm Shimura Yami. He blinked. Even though he'd seen Guy in the anime, seeing him in real life was even more overwhelming. Especially that tight green jumpsuit. Only a Konoha acorn could pull that off. Host has formed a companion bond with Might Guy. Reward, medium physical fitness enhancement. Yami was stunned. This was the easiest bond he'd ever formed. They had only just met and exchanged names, yet Guy already considered him a companion? Kurane gave an awkward smile. Guy, we're not here to reinforce the front lines. We're just completing a regular escort mission. Oh, I see. Guy looked disappointed but quickly regained his spirit. No problem. We'll definitely get a chance to fight together in the future. Kurane, how's Kakashi doing? Kurane shrugged. He's joined Anbu and is rarely seen. I haven't run into him in a while. Anbu really is something to aspire to, Guy sighed, tears welling up. It's a shame Elder Dan's didn't let me join Root, or I wouldn't have lost back then. Kurane and Yujao glanced at Yami. Yami was speechless. Not everyone wants to join Root. Hey! Guy looked at him in confusion. Yami is Elder Dan's grandson, Kurane whispered. He knows a lot about Root. Whoosh! In the blink of an eye, Might Guy was kneeling in front of Yami, trying to hug his leg, but Yami deftly dodged. Guy didn't mind. He knelt on one knee, tears streaming down his face. What are the conditions for joining Root? I'm sure I meet them. There are a lot of requirements. Yami thought back to Dan's usual standards. How did you do in stealth training back at the academy? Never passed. What about assassination class? A real man should beat his enemies head on. Can you take off your, training suit? No. It's the symbol of my youth. Clap. Yami clapped his hands and shrugged. See? You don't meet the core requirements for root. We can't accept you. I see. Guy began crying again. As expected, Kakashi is truly my eternal rival. He's achieved everything I couldn't. I'll train even harder tomorrow. Yami. At first, he thought Guy would be an easy bond to grind, but now forget it. This guy is too much. He might actually get infected with youth. Kurane gave a wry smile and whispered, Guy's always like this. You'll get used to it. But he's a good person. Yujao subtly took a step back and nodded softly. Yami. Just then, Hisashi's voice rang out from behind. Everyone turned to see Hisashi walking over with a scarred, high ponytailed middle-aged man. Let me introduce you. This is Hayama Shirakumo, the commander of the front lines. These are my team members, Shimura Yami, Uzuki Yujao, and Ui Kurane. Kurane and Yujao quickly bowed. Yami simply nodded in acknowledgement. Host has formed a talent-cherishing bond with Hayama Shirakumo. Reward, Wind Release Nature Transformation, Mastery. Talent-cherishing? Yami looked at Hayama in confusion. Feeling his gaze, Hayama smiled warmly. Hello. I heard from Hisashi that you performed admirably in the battle. This mission has been upgraded to A rank. The village will compensate you accordingly. It's getting late. You can rest here for the night and set off again tomorrow. A&D. Hayama paused, glancing at Might Guy. Guy, you'll return tomorrow with Hisashi, carrying my letter. Yes. Guy responded loudly. I'll rush back as fast as I can. No need to rush. Hayama waved his hand. The battle has cooled down. We no longer need as many shinobi on the front line. After you return, Hokage-sama will assign you a new mission. Got it. Guy seemed a bit down but cheered up thinking he'd see Kakashi again soon and could compete with him once more. Late that night, Yami lay in his tent, staring at the dark ceiling. He was reviewing the earlier battle against Ishigaki. Shigetsu and Ishigaki only had to die, but he had a lot to reflect on. Every Jainin was no ordinary opponent. The reason he killed Shigetsu in one strike was that Hisashi had already blocked several of his tenketsu, disrupting his chakra flow. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been that easy. As for Ishigaki, the man was like a walking turtle shell. If he hadn't forced him out with lightning release, the fight would have dragged on. In short, Yami found several weaknesses in himself during that battle. His nature transformation skills were strong but hadn't yet reached the level of overwhelming everything. He couldn't achieve instant kills. This was largely due to the level of his ninjutsu. Though ninjutsu ranks mainly indicate learning difficulty rather than power, higher difficulty often equates to stronger effects otherwise, why bother learning them? His strongest technique was the S-rank water release, hard vortex water blade developed by Senju Tobirama. The rest were all A-rank. But even S-rank jutsu had limitations depending on elemental affinities. In the fight against Ishigaki, the water blade wouldn't have been very effective and would have only exposed one of his trump cards. For most shinobi, improving combat potential was hard. Either they needed time or they had to go all in on secret techniques to enhance specific strengths, like Minato's Flying Thunder God. The fastest path was evolving one's jutsu, Manjiki, or acquiring a cheat-level ability like Sage Mode. Yami couldn't see either of those happening in the short term. So the only option left was to attempt elemental fusion and awaken a Kekkei Genkai. I'll ask Pakura how to train Scorch Release when we get back. Scorch Release was a combination of fire and wind, Yami's two strongest attributes. Over the past 6 months, his relationship with Pakura had improved significantly. They had reached the second stage of their bond. It shouldn't be difficult for her to teach him. Besides that, he couldn't neglect swordsmanship training. Against single targets, a blade was still more efficient than ninjutsu. Just as Yami was laying out his training plans, he heard a rustle outside the tent. He quickly placed 2 fingers on the ground and sensed a familiar chakra signature. He was puzzled for a moment. Then came a soft whisper. Yami, are you asleep? No. Come in, Yujao. It was Yujao. She entered through a small gap in the tent and sat beside his mattress, whispering. I knew you wouldn't be asleep so early, so I came to check. What's up? Yami sat up, curious. Nothing. Yujao shook her head. I was just wondering about the sword techniques you used in the last battle. I've never seen them before. Did you develop them yourself? She had wanted to ask for a while, but they had been too tense during the journey to chat about side topics. You mean Flash and Disruption? Yami understood. He patted the mattress beside him. Come, I'll explain. Yujao didn't hesitate. She got under the blanket and moved beside him. Yami lay down again, turning slightly. Those two techniques are indeed my own creations. Flash is a sword draw slash. It's part of a series I've been developing, though it's not yet complete. Not even complete, and already that strong. Yujao was surprised. She still remembered the brilliant blue slash. It was utterly overwhelming. Even if I'm a genius, I can't fully develop a set of S-rank swordsmanship in just 3 months, Yami rolled his eyes, though she couldn't see it in the dark. A whole set, all S-rank. Yujao was even more shocked. Among Konoha-style sword techniques, only Dance of the Crescent Moon was A-rank. She'd only heard rumors of another A-rank move in the Konoha style but had never seen it. And Yami had created an entire series. More accurately, it's a series, Yami explained. Each move in the Flash series corresponds to a specific type of sword draw slash. There are different kinds. Of course. Flash emphasizes ultimate speed, using wind release to create unparalleled cutting power. Disruption affects the enemy's perception by altering the attack rhythm, making them misjudge. There's also power slash, which focuses on raw force. As he inhaled the faint scent of her purple hair, Yami's eyelids began to feel heavy. Mid-sentence, his words faded, replaced by steady breathing. Yujao had been listening intently, but suddenly felt his weight lean against her. He had fallen asleep and was now resting against her shoulder. She couldn't help but smile softly. She'd originally planned to return to her tent, but now she didn't dare move for fear of waking him. Shinobi usually slept lightly when out on missions, always on alert. So she lay there quietly. Perhaps the blanket was too cozy, or perhaps it was the warmth beside her, but before long, Yujao also drifted off. Morning came. Yami woke and felt something soft beside him. He opened his eyes and found Yujao sleeping soundly next to him. He couldn't help but sigh. A beautiful girl pillow was definitely more comfortable than the ones at home. Chapter 57, Chapter 57, Dan's Hunting Plan, Bonus. Inside Konoha Village. On the top floor of the Hokage building, the Sandaime Hokage, Sarutobi Hiruzen, silently held the battle report from the front lines in the land of Earth. Bang! Just as his pipe burned out and he took the final puff, the door was violently pushed open. Dan strode in with aggressive momentum, completely shedding his usual disguise of slow and measured movement. At this moment, Dan's was like an enraged old lion. The cane that was usually by his side was nowhere to be seen as he walked directly up to Hiruzen. Hiruzen was unsurprised by his arrival. After receiving the report, he had mentally prepared himself. In fact, he thought Dan's came later than expected. Hiruzen, I need an explanation. Dan stared coldly with his single eye. You better not be behind this, or else. What nonsense are you spouting? Hiruzen interrupted, visibly annoyed. Are you accusing me of plotting against Yami, that I leaked information to IWA Shinobi? Dan's chuckled. You wouldn't do that, but do you think I don't know you? Standing by and doing nothing is also a form of enabling. He knew Hiruzen too well. Like during the fall of the former land of whirlpools or the death of White Fang, Hiruzen had never interfered. Sitting atop the Hokage throne, withholding his stance or opinion, and simply waiting for events to unfold had always been his strategy and it had served him well. I knew nothing. Hiruzen's expression darkened. Why would I harm Yami? He's your grandson and a future hope of the village. Dan's, am I that despicable in your eyes? That mission was chosen by Hisashi on a whim. Intelligence on the land of Earth is Root's jurisdiction. Dan's, I haven't even held you accountable yet. Hiruzen's voice grew stronger and sharper. 2 Jonin, 3 special Jonin, and a team of Chunin were nearly ambushed, and your Root didn't detect a thing. I gave you full authority to operate Root independently, and this is how you repay me. If anything had happened to Yami and the village lost a genius, the fault would lie with you. Blame me. Dan's one eye widened, filled with disbelief. You think I'd harm my own grandson? Hiruzen shouted, it was your incompetence that put him in danger. Fine, fine. Dan's laughed angrily. I'm incompetent. I put Yami at risk. Then let me handle the investigation into the information leak to make up for it. No. Hiruzen rejected flatly. I've already sent Anbu to investigate. This isn't within your authority. He's my grandson. Dan's, I am. Bang. Before Hiruzen could finish, Dan's had slammed the door and left. After what had happened to Yami, he had no intention of continuing the argument. If Hiruzen wouldn't let him investigate, then fine, he'd do it his way. No matter who was involved, no matter their clan or status, they would pay the price. After Dan's left, Hiruzen remained half angry, feeling caught in a situation where he couldn't move forward or retreat. It took a long time for him to calm down and begin pondering the ambush again. More specifically, he was thinking about Yami. The strength Yami had displayed far exceeded expectations. He could now be considered the most promising talent in Konoha since Namikaze Minato. Hiruzen wasn't afraid of Yami. After all, the boy came from a good background and had been evaluated by Jiraiya, who confirmed his character was solid. But what Hiruzen wanted was a Shimura who would grow under his guidance, not another root leader twisted by Dan's extremism. He couldn't push too hard, though, or he'd worsen his relationship with Dan's. So far, Hiruzen had opted for a more subtle approach, nurturing connections through Uchiha Izumi at the academy, and through Uzuki Yujao and Ui Kurane in Yami's team. These three were Yami's emotional bonds in the village. Originally, Hiruzen believed there was still time before Yami matured, allowing for gradual influence. But Yami's rate of growth was too fast. There was no time left to delay. He needed a legitimate reason to bring Yami under his command and slowly steer him away from Dan's influence. Border of the Land of Fire. After a night's rest, Hisashi's team prepared to leave the camp. As the commander, Hayama Shirakumo came to see them off personally. Ordinarily, teams would part ways at this point, since the escort mission was complete. However, to ensure the safety of the three Chunin teams and to guard against any remaining IWA shinobi in the Land of Fire, Hisashi decided they should travel together, which slowed their pace. Yami-kun. Just before departure, Hayama stopped Yami. Yami turned, a little puzzled. Is something wrong, Hayama Jainin? This is for you. Hayama smiled and handed him a scroll from his ninja pouch. Hisashi told me about your outstanding performance. Although the village will raise the mission reward, you also helped the front lines tremendously. This is my personal gift to you. It contains my insights on combining swordsmanship with wind release, and techniques for the body flicker technique. I believe it will be useful to you. Thank you, Hayama Jainin. Then I'll accept it politely. Yami smiled and took the scroll without hesitation. Though Hayama only appeared once in the anime, he had left a strong impression on Yami. The body flicker technique and swordsmanship he displayed were definitely top tier among Jainin. In an era when power levels hadn't inflated, Hayama's strength was on par with Kakashi's at the time. But that wasn't the most important part. The key was: Hayama was handsome. Being strong is temporary. Being handsome is forever. There were no incidents on the way back. The group returned to Konoha 3 days later. Kurane, Yami-kun, I'm going to find Kakashi first. After handing in his report, Might Guy flashed his dazzling smile and teeth, gave them a thumbs up, and disappeared in a few leaps. As for calling Yami's name wrong, Yami didn't even want to complain. Arguing with Guy would only exhaust him. Watching Guy leave with a blank expression, Yami narrowed his eyes at the two girls snickering beside him. Is it funny? Not funny at all, Yami-kun, Kurane said, suppressing her laughter and teasing him again. Yujao, don't let Kurane eat for free next week. Yujao, you're not actually going to listen to him, are you? Sorry, Kurane. No. Yujao. I thought we were sisters. Sorry, we're not anymore. While the three were messing around, an Anbu appeared and led them to the Hokage's office. Hiruzen looked at Yami and the others with a kind smile. Hisashi, you and your subordinates did an excellent job. If your team hadn't taken this mission, the front line's supplies would have been jeopardized, and there might have been casualties. Hiruzen started by praising them, as if Yami and the others were the pillars holding Konoha together. Without them, the whole village would fall apart. Hisashi and the others blushed. Only Yami remained unfazed. He yawned out of boredom, interrupting Hiruzen. Old Third, you owe us an explanation. His voice was casual. No one said anything about elite IWA shinobi attacking during this mission, but more than 20 ambushed us. If I weren't so outrageously talented, we would have died. Hiruzen's smile froze, and his heart sank. Why is this brat so sly? He thought a few flattering words would do the trick, but it didn't work on him at all. Helpless, Hiruzen sighed and said seriously, "Don't worry, Yami. I've already assigned Anbu to investigate. Don't act rashly. I promise you'll get an answer." "All right." Yami replied half-heartedly. "Do what you want. But if you can't find the culprit, I'll just eliminate everyone in the intelligence department. No point paying people to be useless." Cough. Hiruzen nearly spat out his tea. You've been influenced by Dan's too much. Don't mess around. Ninjas are still people. Mistakes happen. Leave it to me. You go prepare instead. In 1 month, shinobi from the land of earth, the land of wind, and several smaller countries will be here for the Chunin exams. Konoha's reputation is in your hands. If anything happens, see how I punish you." With that, Hiruzen kicked them out. He was afraid that if the conversation continued, Yami would say something even more outrageous. After everyone left, Hiruzen wiped the cold sweat from his forehead. No, this child is already walking down a dark path. He must be pulled out of Dan's influence immediately. After leaving the Hokage building and parting with Kurane and Yujao, Yami headed for the root base. The more he thought about it, the angrier he became. Usually, Dan's was the one ambushing people and scheming from the shadows. Why was he the one being ambushed this time? Wasn't this an insult to the king of scapegoating? Since birth, Yami had never been so wronged. He needed answers. What he said in the Hokage's office wasn't a joke. If the true culprit wasn't found, then the intelligence department would have to be the scapegoat. Root had taken the fall too many times. It was someone else's turn now. He was certain Dan's thought the same. Sure enough, when he arrived, there were noticeably fewer shinobi stationed at Root. The massive underground space felt deserted. Yami met Dan's in the familiar office. Seeing him return, Dan's nodded slightly. "Good to see you back. Don't worry. Someone will definitely pay for this." "Any leads?" Yami asked. Dan's voice was icy. "3 of our covered agents were sacrificed, but we uncovered some clues. It's linked to a grain merchant in the Land of Fire. On the surface, he sells grain. But he also sells intel. I haven't touched him yet. I want to see who feeds him the information." Yami nodded. "Let me handle it when the time comes." Dan smiled faintly, admiring Yami's decisiveness. A bit of ruthlessness is necessary in this world. But the next second, that smile vanished. Yami waved his hand and turned to leave. "I'm going to see Pakura. Let me know if there's anything." "Wait. I still have something to tell you." Dan's quickly stopped him. Yami returned reluctantly and slumped onto the sofa. "Old man, what now?" Dan's asked seriously. Yami glanced at his status panel and muttered, "I'm invincible below cage level?" "Above cage level, old man, don't tell me." He suddenly stood up. "You want me to assassinate 3rd Hokage? Not now. Wait a few more years." Dan's was speechless. "What nonsense! How could I let you kill Hiruzen? With that stain, how would you become Hokage?" "All right then." Yami sighed in relief. "As long as it's not a cage-level opponent, I'm confident." "You're really that strong now?" This time, Dan's was the one skeptical. Since Shisui had stopped tutoring Yami, Dan's hadn't had a clear grasp of his growth. It wasn't until Yami killed 2 IWA Jainin that he realized the boy had reached this level. Yami scratched his head. "Isn't there an elite Jainin en route? Just have him spar with me." Dan's shook his head. "There are 2, but their techniques are only suited for assassination, not sparring. Anyway, when I sparred with Shisui half a year ago, he couldn't beat me. Now, I'd win even easier." "You don't believe me?" Yami smirked. "In that case," Dan's considered. "This mission is perfect for you. Yami, during the Chunin exams, I want you to kill as many shinobi from other villages as possible and crush their arrogance." Dan's eyes turned cold as he pressed his hand on the armrest. Hiruzen is always too soft on outsiders. But he doesn't realize that only power earns respect. That's the key to peace. But if you accept this mission, your life will become more dangerous. The high-ranking officials from other villages will see you as a major threat. That's why I had to confirm whether your strength was enough. At the very least, you need to be elite Jainin level. Of course, if you don't want to accept it, I won't force you. Danzō fell silent, giving Yami time to consider. Yami didn't take it seriously at all. He waved lazily. That's it? Just kill some enemies? Don't worry. If I run into them, none will leave alive. You're not concerned about your own safety? Danzō couldn't help asking. Yami smiled. Don't worry. My body flicker technique is on par with Shisui's. If I don't want to fight, I can always escape. Unless the fourth Reikage personally hunts me down, no one can catch me. Yami's greatest advantage was his Ninja World Darkness talent. As long as he moved in the shadows, even the fourth Reikage wouldn't be able to catch him. Well said. You're worthy of being my grandson. Danzō slammed the table. Then show them what you've got. Let the 5 great nations remember your name. I'd like to see who Hiruzen can pick to replace you as Hokage. Becoming Hokage had become Danzō's obsession. But he knew better than anyone that Hiruzen was a master manipulator. Removing him wouldn't be easy. Last time, he got rid of Orochimaru, but Hiruzen simply sacrificed Jiraiya and resolved the crisis. Yami had become Danzō's last hope. If Yami could surpass Hiruzen, then maybe the second Hokage had chosen the wrong successor. That moment from back then kept replaying in his mind. Danzō had asked himself countless times if he hadn't hesitated that day, would everything have turned out differently? Unfortunately, there were no ifs in this world. There was no medicine for regret. As the old man sat lost in thought, Yami quietly slipped away and headed to Pakura's room. Although she was free to move around, Pakura still kept herself locked in her room most of the time. Today was no different. Yami didn't even bother knocking. He just pushed the door open and shouted. Pakura, I was bullied. You have to take revenge for me. Chapter 58, Pakura's submission. Half a year may not seem like much, but it can change a lot. At the very least, Pakura's home had changed significantly. Previously, the room only had basic furnishings: a bed, a cabinet, a table, and a bench. Now, the room was filled with various daily necessities, making it feel much warmer. It resembled a cozy nest for a single woman. Seeing Yami burst in, Pakura didn't even lift her head. She continued knitting the sweater in her hands and said calmly, "Is there anyone in Konoha who could possibly bully you? You should be grateful you haven't bullied others instead. Even icebergs eventually melt." Not to mention, Pakura had always been someone with a passionate nature. After half a year of living together, at least when it came to Yami, her attitude had changed completely. She had also learned quite a bit about Yami's background and personality. He was a little devil, more arrogant than any of the heirs of the Kazekage she'd seen in the Land of Wind. Of course she wouldn't believe his excuses. It wasn't anyone from Konoha, it was an Iwa nin. Yami picked up his cup and drained it in one gulp. Then he sighed. "Didn't I go on a mission a few days ago? It was supposed to be a simple supply escort, but we got ambushed by Iwa nin along the way." Pakura's hands finally stopped. She looked up at Yami with concern and carefully examined him. "Were you injured?" "No." Yami shook his head. "The team was ambushed by 2 Nin. I killed them both, but it wasn't easy." Pakura snorted coldly. Always pretending to be upright while playing dirty behind the scenes. That's Nokia's style. Yami's mouth twitched. If she hadn't added the second part, he would have thought she was criticizing Hiruzen. Still, there was nothing wrong with her description of Noki. He provoked the war with Konoha, led nearly 10,000 Iwa nin to ambush the Third Reikage, then turned on Tsunagakure when the tide turned. Now both sides were enemies. Even during the relative peace of the future, he didn't behave. After Orochimaru's assault on Konoha, Iwagakure was the first to invade, only to be repelled by Hayama Shirakumo. Later, he frequently hired members of the Akatsuki to carry out shady missions. Noki had always been the troublemaker of the shinobi world. A perfect example of an old man who wouldn't die and just kept scheming. "Pakura, I want to learn Scorch release from you," Yami said, getting straight to the point. "I realized on this mission that ordinary elemental jutsu still have too many flaws. Only a Kekii Genkai can overcome those limitations." Scorch release. Pakura's expression turned thoughtful. She remained silent for a while, then finally nodded. "With your mastery of fire and wind release, there's a strong chance you can learn it. I'll teach you." "Hehe, you're so good to me." Yami cheered and threw himself into Pakura's arms, quickly finding a comfortable position. Pakura couldn't help but smile. This brat finally acted like a kid. Pakura. Yami suddenly spoke. You've been en route for a long time now. Don't you want to leave? Pakura's expression turned complicated. She understood what Yami meant by leave, a complete break from the past. But after being betrayed, she no longer wanted to live as a shinobi. As if sensing her inner conflict, Yami raised his head, though he couldn't see her face, it was blocked. Pakura, don't overthink it. I've already said, I'm not recruiting you for Konoha. I'm recruiting you for myself. I need your strength. I need your help in the future. But only for me, not for the village. But what if you become Hokage? Pakura asked calmly. Just like Raza. We used to be comrades, but he didn't hesitate to betray me. You're comparing me to that kind of trash. Yami frowned, clearly displeased. He sat up immediately. Nothing will change even if I become Hokage. And once I do, I'll be invincible in the shinobi world. Why would I need to sacrifice you to gain anything? Who knows if the 5 great nations will even still exist by then? Pakura was surprised. You want to destroy the other nations? Yami nodded calmly. The existence of so many countries is a mistake. If I have the power, I won't be as indecisive as Senju Hashirama. Pakura thought Yami's idea was crazy, but she also felt he was right. If there weren't so many large and small nations, there wouldn't be so many shinobi wars. The shinobi village system had only existed for 50 years, yet 3 world wars had already erupted. War had lasted longer than peace. If Yami's vision came true, even if conflict remained, its scale would be far smaller. It wouldn't be like the shinobi wars, where lives were treated like dirt. She glanced around the small house. Every inch and every corner was familiar to her now. In the end, Pakura nodded. Remember what you said. I'll only fight for you. Host and Pakura's bond has reached the 3rd stage. Kekii Genkai, Scorch release unlocked. Yami grinned. Of course. Yami took Pakura out of the root base. Danzō quickly received the news. He understood that Yami's recruitment of Pakura had succeeded, at least for now. After a brief hesitation, he chose not to interfere. After the upcoming Chunin exams, Yami would be exposed to the eyes of every major power. Having more powerful allies around him was a good thing. Even if Pakura was unreliable, she wouldn't pose a problem in the short term. It was essentially added insurance for Yami's safety. Dan summoned Yamanaka F and forged a root ninja profile for Pakura, code name, Chi. It included fake mission records and fabricated family ties. From then on, Pakura officially had Konoha citizenship and was no longer an illegal resident. On the bustling commercial street, the crowds were lively. Every shop was doing great business. There were shinobi and civilians alike. Many smiled as they walked, relaxed and carefree. Pakura stared at the scene, dazed. Compared to Sunagakure and even the other nations, Konoha had a unique air of peace and prosperity. Living here, one couldn't even feel the presence of war. Unlike other shinobi villages, the atmosphere wasn't heavy or oppressive. In Sunagakure, it was rare to see such harmony between shinobi and civilians, and the social hierarchy was strict. Even a genin would be addressed as sir by regular people. It's amazing, Pakura murmured subconsciously. Yami nodded. It really is. Konoha was the friendliest and safest place for ordinary people. Though he disliked Hiruzen, it was due to political conflict. Yami didn't deny the man's achievements. Under Hiruzen's decades of leadership, Konoha had never lacked young talent. And even if battles raged outside, he never allowed enemy forces to enter the land of fire. He had turned Konoha into a genuine paradise. Though Yami felt others could have done the same. Well, not his old man. He was a warhawk not suited to lead a village. Far too extreme. The two entered a clothing shop, picked out some new clothes for Pakura, and bought other daily items before heading back. Once home, Yami handed the bags to a staff member and led Pakura upstairs to choose a room. This one is the biggest. That one's closest to my room. Don't pick the one at the end, it's the old man's. He doesn't come back often, but it's still his. This one's fine, Pakura said, pointing to the room closest to Yami. All right. I'll have someone clean it up later. Yami stroked his chin. But I won't be living here for long. After I pass the Chunin exams, I'll move out. This place isn't good. Pakura asked curiously. The Shimura house was modest in style, but its decor was elegant and expensive. Just the furniture was worth more than a suma. Well, this is still the old man's house. Yami shook his head. I want a place of my own. Plus, I plan to live with Izumi. Staying here forever isn't an option. Pakura immediately gave him a look of disdain. She knew who Izumi was. Yami had even shown her a photo of a very cute little girl. They were still just kids, and they were already thinking about living together? No wonder Konoha had so many shinobi. It was because of early romance. Yami noticed the judgment in her eyes and felt his integrity had been attacked. What are you thinking? I just want to live closer to Izumi. Her situation within the Uchiha clan isn't good. If she moves out early, she won't have to suffer. He wasn't about to say he didn't want to live in Uchiha territory and get caught up in Ataka's drama. Alright, I was wrong. Pakura realized she'd misunderstood and tried to pat Yami's head to comfort him, but he smacked her hand away. Come on, let's get inside. I'll remove the seal on your tongue. Pakura was surprised. You're going to remove the seal? Yami looked at her blankly. Isn't that obvious? Your chakra is still sealed. Am I working for you, or are you working for me? You're not afraid I'll betray you? Pakura was touched but still asked, I'm cage level. Are you really okay leaving no backup plan? Yami glanced at her indifferently. If I didn't trust you, I wouldn't have brought you out in the first place. Stop overthinking. Get in already. Besides, words could lie, but the system's bond rewards couldn't. If even someone at the third stage bond couldn't be trusted, then no one in the world could be loyal. Okay. Pakura smiled brightly. She finally knew her choice was right. Following Yami, even if she died, she wouldn't regret it. At that moment, the village of Tsunagakur, which had always occupied a corner of her heart, vanished completely. All that remained was the image of one person. At 5 p.m., Yami picked up little Izumi as usual. Her black hair had grown much longer, nearly to her waist. She had also grown taller. Seeing Yami had come to get her, she was overjoyed and quickly followed. Yami, are you going to take part in this Chunin exam? Izumi asked curiously along the way. The village had been preparing for it recently, and Izumi had heard a bit. I heard Ataka will participate. The elders say he'll definitely make Chunin. He'll be there. Yami held her hand and said slowly, I know. The third Hokage wanted me to team up with him, but I turned it down. Izumi, I'll be moving out after the exam. Do you want to leave the Uchiha clan too? Hey. Izumi blushed and replied shyly, Yami, we're still young, isn't that inappropriate? Yami's face darkened. Girls were supposed to mature earlier, right? He hadn't even been thinking that far ahead. It's not cohabitation. Just living nearby, Yami explained. That way we can train together. It's also close to the academy and the commercial district. It'll be more convenient for you and your aunt. I see. Izumi looked a little disappointed but soon focused on the idea. She wanted to be closer to Yami. She didn't have many friends in the Uchiha clan. The other clansmen looked down on her and her mother because of her father's status. But there were still two problems. First, she had to convince her mother to agree. Second, could they afford to live near Yami? Yami had already anticipated these issues. I've already found 2 side-by-side houses. Mine is bigger. The other one is smaller, but perfect for you and your aunt. You can rent it first, then buy it later once you've saved up from being a ninja. You can ask your aunt when you get home. I believe she'll agree if it's good for you. Izumi nodded nervously. I'll ask her tonight. All right. Yami smiled. As long as Izumi left the clan, no matter what happened to the Uchiha, she wouldn't be caught in it. If Konoha could protect one Uchiha Sasuke, it could handle one more. Soon, the two arrived home. Seeing the mature woman in the house, Izumi was confused. Yami, who is she? Hello, Miss Izumi. Pakura smiled. I'm a member of Root. Codename, Chi. I'm responsible for guarding Master Yami and handling some of his daily affairs. It was the first time someone had called her Miss. Izumi blushed. Just call me Izumi. I'm starving, so I'll leave Yami's safety to you. Pakura's smile didn't fade. I'll protect Master Yami with my life. Alright, enough chatter. Let's eat. I'm starving. Yami interrupted and rubbed his belly as he walked inside. After dinner, Pakura and Izumi got along well. No one could dislike such a gentle, lovable girl. And as Yami's childhood friend, Pakura made an effort to bond. Their relationship quickly warmed, and they dropped the formality. After the meal, Yami checked Izumi's training progress. A year ago, she already had the strength to graduate. Another year had passed, and her growth had been steady. Once she awakened her Sharingan, her chakra would grow rapidly, and she could soon become a Chunin. Yami planned for her to stay in the academy for one more year. Once she graduated, maybe he could even be her Jonin. Hearing that there was a chance to be on the same team as Yami, Izumi eagerly agreed. As night fell, Yami walked Izumi home to the Uchiha district. After returning, he took Pakura to the underground training chamber. Let's begin. I want to master Scorch release before the Chunin exam. Getting the third stage bond reward had been a nice surprise. But he still needed Pakura's experience with Scorch release to master it fully. With her guidance, his progress would definitely accelerate. Pakura didn't say much. She quickly entered teaching mode and began explaining her experience in training Scorch release. Chapter 59, Updating the Bond System. Scorch release, or rather, the training process for all Kekkei Genkai formed by combining different chakra natures, follows a similar path. As long as you master one, with your talent and full chakra nature compatibility, it's highly likely you can awaken several other Kekkei Genkai. Pakura spread her hands, and two golden fireballs floated in her palms, dancing gently. The temperature in the underground chamber rose sharply, and the air quickly dried out. Scorch release generated much higher heat than regular fire release and possessed other terrifying qualities. Its most broken ability was its capacity to evaporate water in an instant. If it came in contact with a person, it could turn them into a dried husk. Pakura's signature technique, extremely steaming murder, was based on this principle. Additionally, due to the integration of wind nature, the speed of Scorch release fireballs far exceeded that of fire release, making them even harder to defend against. Yami took a few steps back, not out of fear of the heat, but because the dryness was overwhelming. He didn't want to end up coughing from it. Seeing this, Pakura dispersed the fireballs in her hands. Actually, everyone in the ninja world knows that fusing two chakra natures can awaken a Kekkei Genkai. But why have so few succeeded? First, it's because very few people possess both natures and have strong talent in both. Many Jonin manage to learn a second nature, but only to expand their jutsu arsenal, not to delve deeper into fusion. Second, there's a major misconception. Most people think you extract each nature separately, then fuse them. But in reality, fusion occurs during the extraction process itself. You refine Scorch release chakra directly. As she spoke, Pakura demonstrated slowly, purposefully condensing chakras so Yami could see clearly. Scorch release is mainly fire-based. So, when fusing, the ratio is about 70% fire and 30% wind. Although the system had already rewarded him with Scorch release, Yami still paid close attention. The system merely gave him the affinity for it, not instant mastery. He still had to train. After watching Pakura's demonstration, he followed her instructions and tried it himself. Forming the ram seal, Yami began extracting chakra accordingly. Boom! To Pakura's astonishment, a sphere of orange-red flame erupted from Yami, wrapping around his entire body. A few seconds later, the flame grew unstable. It flickered for a bit longer before flaring up and then vanishing. Yami shook his head, dissatisfied. Still rough. Chakra output wasn't stable enough. Are you trying to piss me off? Pakura snapped. You're complaining after succeeding on your first try. Do you know how many years it took me to master Scorch release? Yami, you've been hiding it all along, haven't you? Just to provoke me. No way, Yami said, quickly raising his head and giving her his most innocent gaze. I really just learned it. And you saw it yourself, the chakra isn't stable yet. Pakura nodded suspiciously. Indeed, the performance did resemble a first-time success that collapsed due to poor control. Now that you've taken the first step, you need to make refining Scorch release chakra instinctive. Once you do that, casting Scorch release jutsu will feel no different than using any other element. Pakura pushed Yami to keep practicing. She was genuinely excited. She had taken on an apprentice back in Sunagakure, but the girl didn't have fire affinity and couldn't inherit Scorch release. She never expected that her true successor would be Yami, of all people, here in Konoha. If Yami made his name using Scorch release, it would surely send a message to those old fools in Tsunagakure. A Scorch release shinobi killed by betrayal, only for another village to produce a new Scorch release user? Ironic didn't even begin to describe it. Thinking about the expressions on Raza and the elders' faces when they heard the news, Pakura's motivation only grew. She immediately transformed into a strict instructor, giving Yami no chance to slack off. But Yami's learning speed and comprehension were frightening. He only needed to be shown once, and he'd instantly grasp the correction. By dawn, he could extract Scorch release chakra continuously and steadily. The next step was to expand the volume of extraction in a single use. 15 days later. Scorch release, extremely steaming murder. 2 voices rang out at the same time, one male and one female. Pakura and Yami cast their most powerful Scorch release technique simultaneously, launching fireballs larger than a person at each other. The resulting explosion formed a small mushroom cloud. Thankfully, they were far from Konoha. If they had been closer, the noise would have drawn in the village's shinobi. When the dust settled, a massive crater dozens of meters in diameter remained, the air still heavy with the scent of burning. Pakura stared blankly at the crater for several seconds before letting out a deep sigh. Congratulations, Yami! Your Scorch release is now on par with mine. You've reached the level of mastery. At this moment, Pakura felt both relieved and complex emotions. Most of all, she was stunned by how fast Yami learned. 15 days to catch up to what took her 15 years. Was the gap between people really this wide? What she didn't know was that little Izumi, who had been acting like a house pet these days, was the biggest contributor. With her 100% training acceleration and an additional 20% bonus for being a genin, paired with Yami's own solid foundation, reaching Pakura's level in half a month wasn't so strange. Yami stretched and finally allowed himself a brief rest before the Chunin exams. Let's head back. After returning to Konoha and having a simple dinner with Pakura, Yami used the excuse of being tired to retreat to his room. Once inside, he opened the system interface. The old attribute panel and bond list were gone, replaced by an upgrade progress bar. The bar had already reached 98%. Just a little more to go. Last night, after mastering Scorch release, he had received a system message. Congratulations to the host for reaching cage level. The bond system is being upgraded and will complete in 24 hours. Please stay tuned. Yami had no idea the system could even be upgraded, let alone require cage level to trigger it. Fortunately, Scorch release gave him a shortcut to reach cage level attack power. Otherwise, it would have taken another year through the 5 nature transforms alone. Yami rolled around on the bed, his eyes glued to the panel. Finally, after more than 10 minutes, the bar completed and a brilliant system interface appeared, followed by a pop-up. The strongest bond system has been upgraded to version 2.0. Host, please continue working hard and reach the 6 paths level to unlock version 3.0. Click to view update announcement. Yami ignored the encouraging words. 6 paths? Even if he could reach it someday, it definitely wasn't happening anytime soon. He clicked the update announcement, revealing a concise list of new features. 1. Optimized bond establishment method. Heroes are not judged by their origins, nor are bonds. As long as the target feels strong emotions toward the host, it is no longer necessary for either side to know the other's identity. Current range limit, within 5,000 units. 2 bond points added. Establishing a bond now grants bond points. Stage 1, 1 point. Stage 2, 10 points. Stage 3, 100 points. Note, life and death bonds earn half as many points due to their unique nature. Bond with a country now also grants rewards based on national power. Bond point functionality. Bond points can be consumed to improve skill proficiency and talent cap. Point cost depends on rarity and difficulty of the upgrade. Initial gift. System grants 1000 bond points as compensation. Use them wisely. The announcement was short and easy to understand. Yami schemed it all and quickly understood the changes. Both were huge improvements. The first meant he no longer needed to exchange names before killing someone, which previously made him look like a lunatic. He was a decent kid, he had been forced into that behavior by the system. In the past 6 months, he'd spent more time memorizing intel than training. This change saved a ton of hassle. The second was even better. Not only did the system not increase the difficulty, but it offered extra rewards. Some bonds were ridiculously hard to raise and didn't offer great rewards. Like Jiraiya's sage art talent. Almost no one in the world had it. Originally, Yami planned to wait until Naruto grew up to get it. Now, maybe that wouldn't be necessary. After closing the announcement, his updated personal panel appeared. Name, Shimura Yami. Gender, male. Age, 8 years old. Date of birth, April 1, year 46, Konoha calendar. Chakra attributes, fire, wind, limit break, earth, water, lightning, yin, yang, ultimate. Total chakra, 20.3 cards, 1 card equals 5 standard Jainin. Chakra control talent, ultimate. Mastered ninjutsu, large number of elemental jutsu, several forbidden techniques, Scorch release. Nature transformations, wind, fire, limit break, earth, lightning, water, mastery. Special talents, Senju bloodline, normal, developing, Sharingan, 2 Tomo, swordsmanship genius, ninja world darkness, mother-in-law's expectation, space talent, 2/3, Uchiha bloodline, ultimate, sage art affinity, basic. Evaluation, you've left the beginner village and officially joined the ranks of the ninja world's strongest barely. You're at the bottom tier of cage level. Keep working hard, become a social butterfly, and bond with everyone. Previously, all attributes had silver text. Now, some had turned gold, indicating buttons. Yami tapped one, and a pop-up appeared. Earth release, mastery, 0/500. Upgrade available with 500 bond points. He explored other options to gauge system pricing. Upgrading mastery to ultimate, 500 points. Ultimate to limit break, 1,500 points. Talents followed a similar pattern. Special traits were expensive. For example, Senju bloodline from normal to good equals 2,000 points. To ultimate, likely 4,000 plus. Sage art affinity from basic to intermediate equals 3,000 points. Turns out that 1,000 points wasn't even enough to get started. It was clear the system encouraged mass bonding. Stage 1 gave 1 point, Stage 3 gave 100. But few had reached Stage 3 with him so far. Even Izumi hadn't. Not because her feelings weren't deep enough, but because she was too young. It wasn't mature love yet. Just raise her for a few more years. So the only real option was quantity, and that meant killing. Life and death friendships brought rich rewards and extra bond points. Lying on the bed, Yami's bloodthirst was already stirring. He couldn't wait for the Chunin exam. The more foreign ninjas that showed up, the more he could happily slaughter. With Scorch release mastered and cage level achieved, Yami's training schedule relaxed. He wasn't rushing out at dawn or returning late at night anymore. He introduced Pakura to Kurane and Yujeo, but she wore a root mask to conceal her identity. The mask was specially made impervious even to the Byakugan. Just as Yami thought he could now wait for the Chunin exam, Dan sent someone with a message. He had found the traitor. The moment Yami heard, he grabbed his Kusanagi sword, took Pakura, and rushed to Root. "Old man, where's the target?" Yami looked around as he entered. "They're not here." Dan stood up slowly, pulled his cloak over his head, and stepped in front of Yami. "This one's identity is quite special. I want to gauge Hiruzen's reaction first. But rest assured, the culprit will die. I'm just testing for accomplices." Knowing Yami's temperament, Dan explained clearly. Then he looked at Pakura. "We're going to meet the third Hokage. It's best if you stay at Root." Pakura said nothing, only looked to Yami. When he nodded, she quietly left the room. Dan raised an eyebrow, opening his rarely seen eyes slightly. "Seems you've got her well under control." Yami stretched. "You don't understand. This is the power of bonds. Root's cruelty creates elites, but not true strength. Chakra is physical and spiritual. Suppress emotions too much and you hit a ceiling. But bonds push you forward. Like Might Dua and Might Guy. One kicked the 7 ninja swordsmen into retirement, the other almost kicked the final boss. That's the power of bonds." "Humph." Dan snorted and walked out. "We'll see if you still believe that in the future." The two arrived at the Hokage building. Ignoring the line of shinobi at the door, Danzō barged in, kicked Narashikaku out, and entered. Too arrogant. Hiruzen sighed at his old friend's usual behavior. He already knew why they were here. Enbu had reported everything. Danzō, what are you thinking? Danzō tapped his cane twice and lowered his voice. It was too much. Hiruzen nodded slowly, watching Danzō's expression. But it seems to be a personal issue. Don't involve innocents. Especially now, with the envoys from the Land of Wind and Land of Earth arriving soon. Don't stir things up too much. Well done. Danzō nodded, satisfied with Hiruzen's stance. I'll only punish the main culprit. No innocents. Old man, who is it? Yami was already losing patience. These old men and their cryptic talk made him want to throw a punch. Danzō closed his eyes, then slowly said one name coldly. Hyuga. Hyuga. Chapter 60, Surrounding the Hyuga clan. Hyuga Hyuga. A member of the Hyuga clan? Hearing this name, Yami paused for a moment, combing through his memories. He was certain he had never heard of such a person before. Danzō chuckled coldly. This old man isn't much younger than me or Hiruzen. He's been retired for many years, so of course you wouldn't know him. But there's one thing you should know. The head of the Hyuga clan who was once captured by Kirigakure. It was him. Yami suddenly realized and blurted out. Yes. That's Hyuga Hyuga, the disgrace of the Hyuga clan. Danzō's tone was full of mockery and contempt as he spoke about the coward who had been captured and ransomed. This time, there's a high chance he was targeting Hyuga Hisashi. You just happened to gain an unexpected bonus. Let's go. Yami turned around at once, a cold gleam flashing in his eyes. He wanted to see where this old man had gotten the nerve. Targeting Hisashi? Fine, that was an internal clan matter and none of his business. But knowing that Yami was on Hisashi's team and still pulling tricks, this was blatant disrespect. Danzō followed Yami out of the Hokage building. More than a dozen root shinobi emerged from the shadows. Seeing this, Sarutobi Hiruzen quickly shouted to the air. Shinashuk, take 2 squads of Anbu and follow Danzō. Make sure things don't escalate. Yes. Hyuga clan compound. The Hyuga clan, blessed with the Byakugan, was one of the most heavily guarded places in all of Konoha. When Root and Anbu shinobi surrounded the compound together, they were quickly noticed by the patrolling Hyuga members. The branch members could hardly believe their eyes. What was going on? So many Anbu, they couldn't even distinguish between Anbu and Root, surrounding the clan. Had the Hyuga committed some kind of crime? Shocked and confused, one of the branch members rushed to inform the clan head. At that moment, Hyuga Hayashi was drinking tea with several clan elders. When he saw someone rush into the tea room in a panic, his brows furrowed and he was about to scold them, but then he heard the urgent report. Clan head. Something's wrong. Dozens of Anbu have surrounded the Hyuga compound. Hayashi became angrier. Nonsense. If Anbu were going to surround someone, it would be the Uchiha clan. What would they want with us? It's true, clan head. The branch member was on the verge of tears. See for yourself. Seeing his sincerity, Hayashi's heart wavered. He activated his Byakugan, and after scanning outside, he stood up in alarm. Anbu. Root. And. Shimura Danzō. Better to provoke the third Hokage than Danzō. That was the unspoken rule agreed upon by all 783 clan heads in Konoha. Everyone knew Hiruzen wasn't just some kindly old man spouting about the will of fire all day. As Hokage, his actions were restrained by laws and systems. As long as you were careful and didn't mess up, you'd be fine. But Danzō was different. Root operated like a wild horse without reins. They held real power and had little oversight. Their actions were ruthless and unbound. This type of person, one who didn't follow the rules, was the most dangerous of all. But looking at the situation now, both Root and Anbu had shown up, and Danzō himself had come. Did the Hyuga clan really violate something? Wasn't this the direction of the Uchiha compound? Are you sure you're not mistaken? Seeing Danzō and Yami approaching the gates, Hayashi suppressed his growing panic and immediately ordered, "Quick, come with me to greet them." Several elders activated their Byakugan and nodded in agreement, following Hayashi. Together, they intercepted Danzō and Yami at the entrance. At the same time, more and more Hyuga members noticed the commotion and quickly gathered. In a short time, dozens of people had assembled. It made Yami feel like they were under siege. Elder Danzō, why didn't you inform us beforehand? Hayashi tried his best to remain humble as he greeted them. This isn't a social visit. Clan head Hayashi, you're being too polite. Danzō coughed lightly, feigning the voice of a frail old man, though his words were chilling. From this moment forward, no member of the Hyuga clan is allowed to leave the compound. Uproar. The Hyuga clan members erupted in shock. Is the village turning against the Hyuga? What's happening? Why are there so many Anbu? They're restricting our freedom? Damn it, are they really going to make a move? If you want to die, don't drag us with you. If you resist, it won't just be Anbu. The whole village will come down on us. Danzō's command caused unrest among the Hyuga. But under the fierce gazes of Root and Anbu, no one dared to act recklessly. Hayashi's expression darkened completely. Even if he feared Danzō, this was too much. He suppressed his anger and spoke in a deep voice. Elder Danzō, I don't recall offending you. To place our entire clan under house arrest without explanation, do you truly think the Hyuga are so easily bullied? This isn't personal. It's official. The joint decision is to lock down the Hyuga compound. Danzō didn't even lift his eyelids. His voice was flat, but the implication was heavy. Hayashi, are you sure you want me to explain the reason here? He made no effort to lower his voice. Not only did all the Hyuga hear it clearly, but so did many shinobi who had gathered after noticing the disturbance. This was the tacit understanding between Danzō and Hiruzen. When Danzō saw the Anbu tailing him, he understood Hiruzen's intent. Use this opportunity to make an example of someone. Hayashi's face changed slightly. Behind him, one of the elders, an old man with one eye, trembled and instinctively stepped back. Finally, Hayashi took a deep breath and moved aside. Indeed. This is not a place to talk. Elder Danzō, please come inside. Hold on. Yami raised a hand and pointed behind Hayashi. Take down the one-eyed man back there. Danzō's body trembled slightly, and his expression darkened. He really wanted to throw this loudmouth grandson of his out. Couldn't he explain it more clearly? The one-eyed man wasn't that also indirectly calling him that? With a wave of Danzō's hand, 4 root shinobi dashed forward. Hyuga Hyuga, realizing he had been exposed, immediately turned and fled without hesitation. Seeing Root charging in, the Hyuga members instinctively prepared to block them, but were halted by Hayashi's loud shout. Don't move! Damn it, Hayashi! Hyuga Hyuga cursed in his heart, drawing on all his chakra to escape. But ever since he had been captured and lost an eye, his spirit had been broken. After years of living comfortably, his strength had only declined. How could he outrun 4 elite root shinobi? In just a few seconds, he was caught. Despite his resistance, he was easily restrained. Hayashi looked at Hyuga, who continued to struggle, then turned away and said nothing. 15 minutes later, in the Hyuga clan's main conference hall. All of the clan's elders were present. Hisashi had also been called. Yami, Danzō, and Hayashi sat at the head table. The rest sat along the sides. In the center, Hyuga Hyuga knelt on the floor, head bowed in silence. At that moment, Danzō distributed the evidence Root had uncovered, documents proving Hyuga's collusion with information dealers and the sale of intel regarding Hisashi's team. The evidence was conclusive. Hayashi's limbs turned cold, and he could barely breathe. His Byakugan burned red. He glared at Hyuga, his expression filled with fury, as if he could kill him on the spot. Elder Hyuga, why did you do this? The expressions of the other elders were equally grim. Hyuga's actions had pushed the entire Hyuga clan to the brink of disaster. If this wasn't handled well, at best they would suffer major losses. At worst they didn't even want to imagine it. Konoha had always been suppressive toward powerful clans. The Hyuga usually kept a low profile, so tensions weren't obvious. But the Uchiha situation was plain to see. They were nominally in charge of the police force, but in reality, their influence was minimal. They had few genin, no one in upper management, and were always kept away from power. The Hyuga had avoided this by being loyal and compliant. Rumors had even started saying they were now Konoha's second largest clan. Even if those were exaggerations, they were at least treated with respect. But Hyuga had tried to harm Danzō's grandson. That wasn't just suicidal, it was dragging the entire clan down with him. Under the furious stares, Hyuga finally looked up. His face was ashen and hollow. I lost my mind. I just wanted to make some money from the intel. Elder Danzō, I'll take full responsibility and atone with my life. Do you take me for a fool? Yami propped his chin on one hand and looked at Hyuga mockingly. With the Hyuga clan's background, you're short on money? And even if you were, a one-time intel sale wouldn't help. Why not just tell the truth? Is someone else hiding behind you? Yami's eyes calmly shifted to Hayashi. Though just a child, his gaze made Hayashi deeply uneasy. He quickly defended himself. Young Master Yami, I had no idea what Hyuga was doing. I would never betray the village's interests. Words alone aren't enough, Danzō said coolly. You're the clan head. You didn't know what one of your elders was doing. Hayashi opened his mouth but didn't respond. He wanted to explain how powerless he was. Being clan head meant nothing. Internally, he was little more than a figurehead. These old main family elders didn't respect him and acted on their own. But he still didn't say it. The truth was too shameful. It would mean admitting he wasn't a leader, just a mascot. Hyuga. Hisashi, burning with anger, lashed out. Are you trying to destroy the clan? Other elders joined in. Hyuga, take responsibility for your actions. Don't drag others into this. Yet. Why sell intel on Yami? Don't feed us excuses no one believes. Money? Just one of your antique teapots is worth hundreds of thousands of RY. The clan never treated you poorly. Surrounded by accusations, Hyuga's face twisted with inner conflict. At that moment, Danzō struck again. If you won't talk, we'll just kill you. But in that case, your entire branch will suffer with you. No. Hyuga screamed. They know nothing. This is my doing. If you don't speak, how can we be sure they weren't involved? Danzō's smile was cruel. Root doesn't need evidence, only targets. I'll talk. Hyuga broke down completely, collapsing on the floor. Then, he turned to Hisashi with hatred. Elder Danzō, I never meant to hurt Yami. My target was Hisashi. Everyone turned to look at Hisashi in the corner. Most rolled their eyes. Hisashi, who had been confused the entire time, was now even more lost. Elder Hyuga, why? Shut up! Hyuga shouted like a crazed beast. Why was I the one captured? If it weren't for you, that useless coward who failed to save me, I wouldn't have lived in disgrace. Now you're even favored by the third Hokage and made a Jonin-sensei. Why? Hyuga's decades of resentment exploded, shocking everyone. Elder Danzō, I only leaked the time of the supply transport to Uegakure. I never said Hisashi would lead it. So. Hisashi's team may have been discovered early and failed their mission, but no one would have died. I only wanted revenge on Hisashi. I never meant to harm Yami. My life isn't worth saving. Please, let the others go. Hyuga kowtowed in desperation. He knew he wouldn't live, but he had to protect his branch. Elder Hyuga Hisashi finally understood the source of the hatred, his emotions complicated. Back then, Hyuga had been on the same team. He'd used his Byakugan to sneak deep behind enemy lines for more credit and got caught. But he'd blamed everything on Hisashi. People always look to blame others for their failures, never themselves. But you still targeted my grandson, Danzō said flatly. He had no interest in Hyuga clan politics. Yami, I'll leave it to you. Got it. Yami's figure blurred, and a gust of wind swept through the room. In an instant, a bloody slash appeared across Hyuga's neck. So fast. Hayashi was stunned. He had barely caught a trace of movement. Thud. Hyuga's body fell limp. Danzō smiled, satisfied with Yami's decisiveness. The other elders said nothing. None objected. In fact, they felt relieved. At least things hadn't escalated. They weren't implicated. Also, prepare 100 million RY in compensation, Yami added his final condition. Though it pained him, Hayashi still agreed. That's all. I believe the Hyuga are loyal to Konoha. But I hope the clan head will keep his people in line. With a warning, Danzō left with Yami. Hayashi personally escorted them to the gate. As they passed an old courtyard, Yami suddenly felt someone watching him. He instinctively looked over and spotted a small figure peeking from behind the door, staring at him curiously. When their eyes met, the figure jumped and quickly shut the door.
Thanks for listening.